Our story begins with our heroine remembering that this is the game she played for years, which was a smash hit when it was released. Unfortunately for her, she was reincarnated inside that game as the Villainess, Tolria Fraser. She remembers that the original character was beautiful, but her personality was disgustingly corrupt. This villainess constantly harassed and insulted the story's heroine, Kariko, who was the fiancée of the Grand Duke's heir. She was the typical embodiment of a villainess with a selfish, elitist, and arrogant personality, continuing to commit evil until the very end. She also remembers that this character is known as the Queen of Bad Endings. Regardless of the path, a bloody bad ending and an inevitable fate of doom always awaited her. Our heroine concludes her thoughts by lamenting her fate, wondering why, out of all possible characters, she had to be reincarnated as this trivial character. Our heroine sits in Tolria's body, trembling, thinking that what is happening to her cannot be real. Despite being the daughter of a marquis, her life now is worse than a beggar's, being served hard, stale bread, and the game system shows that this food deducts from her life points. Tolria thinks that dying in her previous life might have been better, but she quickly remembers that her previous life was also a complete disaster. She recalls scenes from her past when she was called Honey. After the death of her mother and stepfather, she suffered mistreatment from her step-siblings who kept trying to marry her off to strange men and threatening her. She recalls being in a car accident, and when she woke up, she found herself reincarnated as the character Tolria inside this game. Back in the present, Tolria looks at the hard bread and realizes that if she continues like this, she will die either from freezing or starvation. She wonders how a marquise's daughter could end up in this state, blaming her absent father. Tolria's backstory is revealed. Her mother ran off with another man and died in an accident. Her father, Marquis Fraser, was disgusted and left the estate to go to the border, leaving his daughter behind without sending her any money to spend. Her father hasn't shown his face to her in years, and Tolria realizes this neglect is the Christmas gift mentioned in the game. She looks at a painting sent by her father and thinks sarcastically, wondering if he thinks sending one painting makes him a father, especially since he didn't even enclose a happy birthday note or even tell her he loved her. Tolria finds a similarity between her previous life and the original Tolria's life. In her past life as Hani, she had to live cautiously in her stepfather's house after her mother's marriage, relying entirely on herself. She believes Tolria might have lived the same way. She continues the comparison, remembering that in the past, no one cared if she ate dinner out 7 nights a week. Her resolve changes, and she decides she cannot continue living like this, and she refuses to die again. As she is determined to find a way to survive, a mysterious blue light suddenly appears before her, making her wonder what it is. The main quest window appears. The window identifies her as Tolria Fraser, overall rating, F-. The quest description was insulting, describing her as trash, bankrupt, and hated by everyone, except one person, and that no one loves her. The goal is to reach rank A before the real one appears. Tolria looks in confusion, recognizing the window as the same quest window from the game she used to play. The quest window displays again, confirming the goal and description. Tolria processes the words, wondering if it meant her by trash, and realizes she is now on a real mission. She understands that the quest requires her to raise the character Tolria, meaning improving her stats. She looks at her horrendous stats: personality -10, wealth -9, skill -10, luck 0, giving her an overall rating of F-. She despairs, wondering how she can improve such terrible stats. She focuses on the phrase, before the real one appears, and immediately deduces that the real one must mean Koriko, the game's heroine. She clenches her fist, realizing she doesn't have much time before Koriko appears, and she must reach rank A within this short period. She screams internally that this is impossible, especially with her F rating, before a sudden flash distracts her. A summary of her situation appears. She is Hani, an old player of the game who died in an accident. She ended up reincarnated as the villainess everyone called trash, and she realizes that once again, she is about to die, wondering if this is a joke. A quest window appears summarizing the goal. She is the trash Tolria Fraser. Until the real one appears, she must achieve rank A to survive. A final warning follows. If she fails, she will die. Tolria looks at her stats window again and screams that this is impossible, wondering how anyone can survive with such awful stats. She compares her situation to the game's heroine, Kariko, who starts with at least an average C rating. She remembers that unless the player was aiming for the hidden ending, there was no reason to choose this hellish difficulty. She holds her head in despair, realizing she is starting from F-, and screams internally that the situation is simply asking her to die. She tries to catch her breath, deciding she needs to organize her thoughts. Tolria gathers her thoughts and sets her goal. What she needs to do now is raise all her stats to rank A. Since she doesn't know when the main heroine Koriko will appear, she must reach this rank as quickly as possible. She tries to encourage herself, remembering that she is a strong-willed Korean who managed to take care of herself and get into a good university in her previous life, so she is capable of anything. She decides to start by looking for what she can do, thinking she might need an assistant to support her in her mission. Suddenly, she hears a voice and wonders in confusion who is coming, as no one is supposed to visit her at this time. A young man with dark hair bursts into the room with a loud smile, announcing the arrival of the great Tedric, and sarcastically wondering how she didn't even come out to greet him. Tolria recognizes him immediately. It's Tedric, her cousin, and she wonders why he came here. The events clarify that Tedric is the son of Viscount Lilius, the younger brother of Tolria's father, and the relationship between her and Tedric was always hostile, like cats and dogs. Tedric, being from a side branch of the family and not a direct heir, always felt jealous of Tolria, who belonged to the direct lineage, and so he always picked fights with her. In contrast, he was very kind to the heroine Kariko and sided with her. Tolria thinks that since Kariko isn't here now, she doesn't understand why he came to her. Tedric starts commenting in disgust about the foul smell in the place, wondering if this is a place where humans live, claiming the stench is giving him a headache. Tolria glares at him, thinking how much of a bastard he is. He continues his mockery, wondering why she made such a fuss at the banquet, in front of her grandfather, as long as she lives in such misery. He adds with a laugh that it's well known her father abandoned her, so why bother with that fact? And that this is why the grandfather put her under unlimited confinement. He calls her pathetic, angering Tolria, who thinks how dare this scoundrel touch her wound like this. In that moment, Tolria, the reincarnated one, realizes the real reason why the original Tolria turned into a villainess. It was because of people like Tedric. She remembers not noticing this when she played the game from Koriko's perspective, because all the Fraser family members surrounding the heroine, except Tolria, were good people. But now that she herself is in Tolria's position, living a life of contempt and mistreatment as an abandoned lady, she began to understand how anyone could become bitter in such circumstances. And even Tolria's evil deeds seemed logical to her now. While she is lost in thought, Tedric shouts at her, calling her a beggar, and ordering her to lower her gaze and not stare at him. Tolria realizes that people like Tedric aren't bad because of the heroine's aura or any external force. They are just bad by nature. She thinks that hitting is the answer for such a bully, and as she thinks this, she picks up a fork. Tedric immediately panics and asks her in alarm what she intends to do. She scoffs internally at his reaction, wondering if he really thought she would stab him. She remembers that the original Tolria had stabbed his hand with a fork in the past, and it seems this terrifying memory is still stuck in his mind. She thinks that she would like to stab him again too, but she holds back. Since personality is part of her stats that must be raised to survive death, stabbing him now would not be a wise choice. She decides to wait for now, realizing that Tedric's arrival means that person, his father, is also coming. Tedric interprets her retreat as submission and asks her mockingly if she has finally realized her place. He approaches her further and continues his insults, calling her a bastard child, resulting from her mother's affair with a barbarian priest. Tolria tries to suppress her anger, telling herself, by her old name, Hanina, to endure just a little longer. At that moment, a man's voice resounds, calling Tedric Fraser, reprimanding him and wondering how he dares to say such things to his cousin. The man Tolria expected has arrived. It's Tedric's father, Viscount Lilius. Tedric tries to justify himself to his father, claiming that Tolria was the one who tried to stab him with a fork first. She, who had expected Lilius's arrival, notices that the Viscount seems unusually angry. Viscount Lilius continues to scold his son Tedric, who stands shocked by his father's vehemence. Lilius wonders how his son, raised by his mother as a precious person, dares to humiliate himself by dealing with a base girl like Tolria. She stands completely bewildered, realizing this situation is an unexpected development. Lilius shouts Tedric Fraser, again, and his son answers in terror. Then he reveals the true reason for his anger. He warns Tedric that his grandfather, the Grand Duke Fraser, will arrive soon. He adds in a stern tone that if the Grand Duke heard what Tedric said, they would all die. Him, Lilius, and his mother. He orders him to shut his mouth completely. Tedric asks in shock why the grandfather is suddenly coming to this dilapidated place. Lilius replies that the reason is the Fraser banquet. Tolria, who is listening, picks up this information and wonders to herself what the Fraser banquet means. She immediately remembers that the Fraser banquet is a grand feast where all members of the Fraser family gather. She continues to analyze the situation. She knows the banquet is supposed to be held at the Grand Duke's main castle. Therefore, she wonders why the Grand Duke is stopping at Rantel Castle, the place where she lives. It becomes even stranger to her when she remembers that the Grand Duke has never come to visit her even once before. After Lilius finishes warning his son, he turns with a fake smile towards Tolria and calls her name. He tells her he has something for her and presents her with a box revealing a luxurious, shiny white dress. She wonders to herself if this is supposed to be a dress. Lilius orders her to wear this dress and come to the banquet, justifying it by saying that His Grace, the Grand Duke, despises shabby appearances. Tolria notices the dress looks extremely expensive and wonders why he is giving such a gift to her. Lilius approaches her, touches a lock of her hair, pats her, and tells her not to worry. This isn't a burdensome gift given for free. He continues with a cunning smile, explaining that her father, the Marquis, We'll pay for everything later anyway. Then he reveals his true intention. He admits that his financial circumstances are not very good right now, then mentions he saw the title deed for the Eliran land registered in her name. He suggests she use this deed as collateral, and in return, he can buy her as many dresses as she wants. Tolria immediately realizes his true nature, thinking to herself that this person is a dirty thief. She remembers the story path in the original game, where the original Tolria trusted Lilius's words and borrowed a huge sum of money from him, but her father, Marquis Fraser, wasn't interested in her at all, and in the final part of the game, Lilius abandoned her, leaving her drowning under a mountain of debt. Even at that stage, the original Tolria clung to the hope that her father would save her. She used to think that her father must care about her, even a little, and that he would save her from this pile of debt. But the current, reincarnated Tolria knows the bitter truth. No one ever cared about the poor Tolria. She realizes that if she accepts his offer now, she might succeed in raising her rating, but she will fall straight into the bankruptcy ending. She decides she must stop this path no matter what. She thinks about her options. She briefly considered using Lilius as an ally, but quickly concluded that someone who only wants to exploit her cannot be trusted with anything. Therefore, she decides to resort to an alternative. The person coming here now, the Grand Duke Fraser himself. She believes that if there is anyone who doesn't need to exploit her, like Lilius, the Grand Duke might be a much better option. She makes up her mind and decides she will try to target the Grand Duke Fraser. But she suddenly remembers what just happened when she met him. She remembers her grandfather's cold face as he asked her threateningly if she meant him when she said he could live happily alone. In a panic, she wonders if she already made the wrong choice by confronting the grandfather, and that she never imagined he would look this scary. She puts her hands over her mouth in horror, wondering what is happening. She recalls her original plan. She was aware that the Grand Duke was the only person who could free her from her dire situation. Therefore, she had prepared herself to win his favor and beg him for her life. She wonders, but why? Why did she end up, due to the penalty, yelling at him, asking him if he thought he would escape punishment while living comfortably alone? She remembers her shock and horror at that moment, covering her mouth and wondering about the words that just came out of her mouth. The scene flashes back to Tolria's first meeting with her grandfather, Grand Duke Asis, who calls her name Tolria Fraser, and asks her in a chilling tone if she was talking to him. She covers her mouth, trembling in terror, thinking to herself that this wasn't her intention at all. All she was trying to say was to ask him to lift the probation imposed on her. Suddenly, she hears a familiar chime and wonders in panic if that was the sound of the status window. Two warning windows appear in front of her. The first repeats that the personality penalty will make her say only what provokes the utmost hostility, and the second warns her that her reputation will drop to a dangerous level. She panics and wonders what is happening. She realizes what she just said was because of her personality stat. She finds this ridiculous. Although she knows the stat is bad, she wonders how she is supposed to survive if the system prevents her from even saying a single word as she wishes. She realizes this situation is even worse than dealing with the loan shark Lilius, or begging the Marquis, her father, who is stranger than strangers to her. She holds her head, screaming internally, realizing she is in a worse mess than she imagined. She remembers she knew exactly how to win the Grand Duke's favor. When she played as Koriko, he quickly became a loving father-in-law to her. She cries in despair, wondering if the difference between a C rating, which Koriko started with, and an F rating, which she started with, is supposed to be this huge. She realizes she must find a way out of this situation, and fast. Suddenly, something else distracts her, making her wonder, what now? She notices something strange. A gauge bar appears above the Grand Duke's head sitting in front of her. She looks closely, wondering if she's hallucinating, but the bar slowly starts turning red. The bar fills up with bright red, and she screams, "It's really turning red." She panics. She knows from her gaming experience that a status bar turning red is never a good thing. She wonders if this is an anger or patience meter, fearing she might be heading towards a death ending if it fills up completely. She decides she cannot die like this. Refusing to die helplessly as she did in her previous life, she reminds herself that this game is Koriko's stage, and she doesn't aspire to a beautiful story like hers. Her only goal is to reach rank A to live a rich and comfortable life. All she dreams of is waking up in a warm palace, eating proper meals, and strolling in a flowery garden, and reading fun books every day. All she wants is to enjoy a simple and ordinary life. To achieve that, she must first stop this thing, the red bar. She decides she will survive no matter what. She realizes that if she opens her mouth now without thinking, she might make things worse. Her first goal is to figure out how to get rid of this damned personality penalty. She thinks that the penalty doesn't have a specific cancellation command, so it can't be disabled by a simple action. She wonders if she should raise the personality stat first, but she's unsure if she can do that right now. A system window appears telling her that stats can be raised using available coins, and it shows she currently has 1,000 coins. Tolria is surprised, wondering about this system of raising stats with coins. She thinks that she never saw this feature when she played as Koriko, and her anxiety increases when she sees another warning stating that cancellation is impossible after confirmation. She decides to ignore her fears. She must survive first and foremost. She decides to raise the stat now. With a chiming sound, multiple windows appear. Personality 0 achieved. All coins used. Personality penalty deactivated. She realizes with joy that she has succeeded. While she is immersed in her joy, the Grand Duke, who is watching her blank out, calls her name, Tolria. Freed from the penalty, she quickly prostrates herself before him and shouts, calling him Grandfather. The Grand Duke looks at her in surprise, as do Lilius and Tedric, who are standing in the background, shocked by her action. She seizes the opportunity and starts speaking, explaining tragically that the budget given to her is so small that all the staff in her castle are starving, and as their lady, she can no longer stand by and watch. She continues speaking while prostrated, adding that she knows he might think the budget is insufficient because she was buying luxuries, but she swears on her name that this is not the case. She continues her plea while prostrated, proposing that she is willing to give up her marriage entirely if he can provide her with her dowry in advance. She explains that she will use this money first to pay off her debts to her uncle Lilius. And then, before she can finish her sentence, Viscount Lilius lunges at her and violently covers her mouth with his hand, yelling her name. He asks her angrily about this insolence she is showing in front of his grace, the Grand Duke. He leans towards her and whispers threateningly, calling her an evil child who dares to spread such unbelievable lies as if they were the truth. Tolria looks at him in shock, barely able to think, wondering what he is doing. Lilius starts dragging her away from the Grand Duke while she resists, shouting that it's not a lie and pleading for his grace to hear her. He turns to apologize to his father, the Grand Duke, saying that Tolria's wild horse-like behavior is nothing new, but he admits he was negligent. She looks in horror at the red gauge bar above her grandfather's head, noticing it's about to fill up completely. Despair washes over her as she thinks about her future collapsing, her dream of reaching rank A and living a comfortable retired life, her small and great dream of never worrying about money again. At that moment, the Grand Duke orders Lilius in a calm but firm voice to let her go. Tolria freezes in place, surprised and wondering if he will listen to her. Lilius also looks confused. The Grand Duke repeats his order in an undeniable tone, ordering him to let her go. She notices with joy that the red gauge bar is starting to fade. She wonders to herself if it worked. Lilius immediately complies, bowing and apologizing to his father. Then the Grand Duke turns to her and tells her to continue what she was saying. She stands stunned, wondering why the Grand Duke is suddenly listening to what she has to say. Her eyes sparkle, realizing that regardless of the reason, this is a chance that will never come again. She quickly composes herself, returns to a prostrating position, and thanks her grandfather. She continues her plea, confirming she will use her dowry to pay the debt to her uncle Lilius, and after that, she will live as if she were dead. She continues her vows that she will not only take care of herself but also the servants of Rantel Castle and maintain her fitness and dignity. Finally, she pleads boldly, asking him if he could show more generosity and lift the indefinite probation he placed on her, concluding her appeal with a cry as she begs her grandfather. A heavy silence fills the room. Cold sweat starts to drip from her, and she wonders anxiously why it's so quiet, and if she said something wrong again. She fears this wasn't an opportunity, but just the excuse the Grand Duke needed to punish her. The Grand Duke breaks the silence, but not by answering her, but by calling his son, Lilius. Lilius answers his father nervously. The Grand Duke begins to question him, asking him if the matter of the children's household affairs wasn't entrusted to him and his wife. Lilius confirms this, bowing. The Duke continues sharply, asking why Tolria is still under the probation she received 3 years ago. He adds that the idea of her believing the 1-month probation was indefinite must be the doing of Lilius and his wife. Tolria listens to this dialogue in complete shock. She thinks to herself, wondering if their words, Lilius's and Tedric's words, were lies. She immediately remembers Tedric's mockery and his words to her earlier, and she realizes the horrifying truth. It wasn't indefinite, but only for 1 month. She comprehends that she received the probation 3 years ago, and it has continued all this time illegally. She realizes that this confinement order is what drove the original Tolria, who was already suffering from a harsh environment, to rely pathetically on Lilius. She reaches an unavoidable conclusion. This is all lies from Lilius and his family. Lilius, sweating profusely, tries to squirm out of the situation, claiming there must have been a mistake. But the Grand Duke continues his pressure, asking if it was also a mistake that Tolria Fraser believes a storage room is Rantel Castle. Lilius freezes, unable to answer. The Grand Duke reveals that he remembers clearly that it was Lilius's wife who reported to him that Tolria was still unruly, even after her 1-month probation ended, and that she herself insisted on living in a storage room, crying and making a fuss. She is hit with another shock, thinking, this isn't even Rantel Castle? She realizes that when she heard the Grand Duke was coming, she simply assumed this was her residence. Lilius is forced to laugh nervously, trying to save the situation. He exclaims that there must be a misunderstanding, claiming that he and his wife never told Tolria this place was Rantel Castle, nor did they ever tell her probation was indefinite. Then, in a desperate move, he turns to Tolria with a fake smile and asks her in a falsely sweet tone if she was mistaken, and who the evil person who deceived her was, and that he would teach them a lesson they would never forget. She looks at him coldly, thinking to herself how ridiculous it is to call her evil or trash. When compared to the real trash, Tolria is nothing. Then she asks him in a calm voice if he really intends to teach that person a lesson, and Lilius, clearly nervous, replies, confirming that of course he will. Her eyes narrow with determination, and she thinks to herself that she will show those real trash the true meaning of a lesson. She clearly remembers the voices of their insults, Tedric's voice mocking the pathetic smell of the place, asking her why she made a fuss at the banquet as long as her father had abandoned her. And she remembers the fundamental lie they built their deception on, the one where they said her grandfather put her under indefinite probation, repeating sarcastically in her mind, "How pathetic." She seizes the opportunity and reuses the very words she heard from Tedric before, saying sarcastically that she must know her place, as she is, after all, just a bastard child, then continues sharply. The bastard child her mother had after an affair with a barbarian priest. Tedric is stunned upon hearing her, thinking in shock and horror that what she is saying is beyond belief, wondering frantically if she has lost her mind. Tedric screams at her, angry and shocked. At that moment, the Duke's angry voice resounds in the hall, calling Tedric Fraser. Tedric turns to find his grandfather, the Grand Duke, in a state of extreme rage, and can only utter "grandfather" in terror. The Grand Duke confronts him, asking him sharply if those were the words he just spoke. Tedric tries to back down, stammering that what happened was just a misunderstanding. Tolria watches the situation with satisfaction, thinking that it's time for the real trash to get a taste of their own medicine. The scene shifts to an explanation of a tradition in the Fraser family. While every prestigious noble family has an heirloom jewel, the members of the Fraser family receive a magnificent and expensive necklace when they first enter society. Of course, Tedric was no exception to this rule. Back to the confrontation, the Grand Duke calls his grandson Tedric Fraser in a terrifying tone. Tedric cries out in pain, as he thought the Duke was going to strike him. His grandfather announces his punishment, that for the time being he will strip him of the honor of Fraser that was granted to him, referring to the necklace. After he finishes punishing Tedric, the Grand Duke turns to Tolria and calls her name, and she looks at him with hope. The Duke announces his decision regarding her, that from this day forward she will reside in the main family headquarters. She stands completely shocked, barely able to believe what she heard, wondering in amazement how she could be invited to stay at the main headquarters. After the Grand Duke's visit, many things changed. The most notable change was the disappearance of the duo, Lilius and Tedric, who had constantly sought out Tolria to provoke her. She thinks they probably chose to hide and reflect on their actions until the Grand Duke's anger subsides. As for her, she was moved to the main headquarters of the Fraser ducal family. She looks at the enormous palace in awe, thinking how incredibly huge it is when seen in person. She feels relieved, realizing she somehow managed to survive inside this game. She is led to her new room, a spacious, bright space filled with luxurious furniture. She exclaims with joy, wondering if this is really her room. An elegant man confirms that it is, and she delights in how beautiful the room is, wondering if it's really acceptable for her to have all this splendor to herself. The man introduces himself as Luke Kilbusher, the Grand Duke's direct aide, and kindly asks her to feel comfortable and consider the place her home. She thanks him. Tolria thinks about her luck. As soon as her confinement was lifted, she was given this wonderful room, which shows how generous the Grand Duke is. On top of that, he assigned his direct aide to accompany her. She wishes to herself that since he is so generous, it would be wonderful if he gave her a budget too. Luke interrupts her thoughts to tell her there is one more thing he must convey to her. He presents her with a letter, explaining that this is something the master of the house is giving her, Miss Tolria. She asks worriedly if this is from the Grand Duke. She immediately feels suspicious, thinking that since her grandfather hasn't completely forgiven her yet, this might be a warning letter ordering her to behave well or something like that. But Luke clarifies that this is her monthly allowance. She asks him in astonishment if this is really her allowance. She opens the letter, looks at the written number, and starts counting the zeros in shock, moving from ones to millions, until she reaches an unbelievable number, 1 billion. She looks at Luke in disbelief and asks him if this is really her allowance. He calmly confirms it with a nod. Luke Kilbusher finishes his duties, wishing Lady Tolria a good rest before taking his leave. She is left alone, staring in a daze at the paper confirming the number. She keeps thinking that they really wrote 1 billion. She realizes she has become rich. Suddenly, a ringing sound from the system is heard, making her wonder in confusion what is happening. A series of system windows appears before her, successively announcing the upgrade of her wealth stat. She exclaims in surprise and amazement. She feels greatly relieved, realizing her wealth stat has finally reached 0, after being in the negative. This is followed by another system window, informing her that she has received the first upgrade bonus. which is an additional 1,000 coins, raising her coin balance to 1,000. She also notices her overall rating has risen to F, after being F-. The system window continues to confirm her receipt of the 1,000 coins and her rating reaching F. She feels overjoyed, surprised by receiving a bonus of 1,000 coins. She starts thinking about how to use this bonus. She wonders if she should boost her weaker stats, like skill or luck, or if she should simply accumulate more financial power. She also considers another option, investing everything in beauty, especially since it's already her highest base stat. She looks at herself in the mirror and backs off from the idea, thinking her current state isn't that bad. She concludes that raising the beauty stat to A level probably wouldn't offer her much additional benefit anyway. She tries to style her hair, thinking that just a simple touch would make her beauty stand out more. But she tries to comb it somehow, and notices the result looks wrong and strange. Suddenly, her hair turns into a wild, messy mass, as if a disaster struck it. She screams internally in panic, wondering why combing resulted in this catastrophe. She looks at her stats window, which shows her skill stat is -10, and realizes the truth. She finds it unbelievable, concluding that this mess happened because her skill stat is absolutely disastrous. She frantically tries to fix her hair, screaming internally that this is a lie, wondering how she is supposed to walk around looking like this, demanding her hair go back to normal. She gives up in despair, feeling doomed. She starts to seriously consider whether she should use the 1,000 coins she got to raise the skill stat immediately. But she strongly rejects this idea, thinking she cannot waste 1,000 coins on something like this. She feels wasting it would be too pitiful and sad. She decides to simply wait for the maid, who will surely know how to comb her hair properly. Suddenly, a new system notification appears, telling her she has acquired 2 coins, bringing her balance to 1,002. She wonders in confusion why she received 2 coins. She continues to wonder why she was suddenly given 2 coins, when all she did was turn her hair into a broom. An idea flashes in her mind, and she realizes she finally understood the meaning of the increase in coins. She stands up confidently, concluding that this means the value of her effort is being converted into coins. The scene shifts to the past, several years ago. A younger Tolria is shown, bowing before her grandfather in obvious fear, muttering a flustered greeting to him. The Grand Duke reminisces in his thoughts. She was stammering, asking about his health. He remembers her as the granddaughter who could never look him directly in the eye. He remembers her expression was trembling so much she couldn't speak clearly, and her expression held nothing but absolute fear and terror. He continues thinking, but then remembers the recent scene when she yelled at him about living lavishly, and finds this transformation truly bizarre. He wonders about the change of heart that made her act this way. The scene returns to the Grand Duke's present. He grants someone permission to enter, and Luke enters. Luke excuses himself, then informs him that, as ordered, he has escorted Lady Tolria to her room. The Grand Duke tells him he has done well and appreciates his efforts. Luke adds that there is something else. The Grand Duke looks at him, wondering what it is. He presents a covered basket, explaining that Lady Tolria asked him to deliver it to him. The Grand Duke asks in surprise if she made this. Luke confirms, saying, "Yes, Your Grace." The Grand Duke contemplates the gift he received, which is a jar, and wonders to himself if what's inside is jam. Meanwhile, Tolria thinks about what she realized during her failed attempt to comb her hair. She concludes that the ancients were right. There is nothing one cannot do if they keep trying. She reaches the first conclusion. She can earn coins regardless of the kind of effort she puts in. She realizes that earning coins is not limited to improving her appearance, but includes any act that helps her become better than she is now. This is why she believes she earned coins even from trying to comb her hair. After this discovery, she starts to wonder what she should do next, and concluded that the answer is simple. Effort and creativity lead to innovation, and from this homemade jam was born. She remembers that the Grand Duke liked handmade gifts even in the game. Therefore, she devises a plan. If she keeps gifting him handmade jam, even if it's poorly made, maybe one day she can win his favor. She laughs sardonically, realizing that due to the skill penalty, low rating, both her hair and the jam she makes are disasters. But she consoles herself that it's just jam, and the Grand Duke won't actually eat it anyway. She realizes there's a limit to what she can earn this way. She feels frustrated that this is the time she needs help, but she doesn't even have a personal maid. She deduces this is most likely because of Baron Lilius, who manages all the family's affairs. She devises a plan to use this situation to her advantage. She realizes the servants will definitely talk about her state. Since Lilius cares about the family's reputation, he will eventually be forced to send her a maid, thus achieving 2 goals at once. She is shown presenting the jam basket to Luke with a wide smile, telling him cheerfully that she is counting on him again today. Luke asks her gently if she made the homemade jam again today. She confirms enthusiastically, adding that she doubts her grandfather will eat it anyway. Luke thinks to himself that the Grand Duke usually doesn't pay much attention to such gifts, but he hesitates to complete his thought. He clears his throat in embarrassment as he sees the messy state of her hair from behind. He suggests they return to her room soon, explaining that the meeting is ending and people are starting to wander around. She agrees and prepares to go back. Tolia thanks Luke for accompanying her. As she expected, two maids start whispering about her. One asks the other if she saw Lady Tolria's hair. The other confirms she did, wondering why it looks like it exploded. The first maid asks if Baron Lilius really didn't assign her a maid. The second replies that maybe that rumor is true. The maid reveals the rumor that Baron Lilius secretly envies his older brother. The first maid concludes in shock that this is the reason then why he is persecuting his niece. The second maid confirms her words, pointing out to the first that they haven't seen any servant enter Lady Tolria's room since she arrived, which convinces the other of the rumor's truth. Earlier, a lady, Lilius's wife, is shown, wondering angrily how that girl, Tolria, who lost her mother and whom they fed and sheltered, dares to forget her place and cause harm to her son Tedric. The lady's identity is revealed. She is Aubrey Fraser, Baron Lilius's wife. Aubrey finds this situation unacceptable and orders one of the maids to go teach Tolria a lesson sufficient to make her remember her true place. She adds that if Tolria has any bit of intelligence, she will understand the message. The maid bows and replies, "Yes, madam." The maid assigned the task smiles slyly, vowing to Tolria, and thinking that she will make her regret smearing Lord Lilius's reputation. The maid arrives at Tolria's room and tells her it's time for dinner. She grants her entry. When she sees the food, she expresses admiration for how delicious it looks, thanking the maid and assuring her she will eat well. She feels happy that her plan worked exactly as she expected. It seems Lilius cares about appearances. He finally sent her a decent meal. She notices a maid came with the meal this time, and as she eats, she thinks happily that she can finally ask her to fix her hair. But she suddenly stops, feeling a sharp pain in her mouth, and wonders in shock. What is this? She looks at the plate in front of her, wondering if she bit into something hard. She spits out small pieces, realizing in horror that this is a stone. She spits out the stone and immediately realizes this is the maid's doing. She wonders if the maid is acting on orders or just out of hatred for Tolria. Either way, she realizes treating the Grand Duke's only niece this way is dangerous, and thinks about whether she should expose the culprit. Suddenly, her thoughts are interrupted by a voice calling her name, asking what's wrong with her. She turns around in surprise. She recognizes the newcomer. It's Aubrey, Lilius's wife. She wonders why she is here. Aubrey notices the food, pointing out she sees her in the middle of dinner. Aubrey adds that she heard her niece had arrived, so she decided to visit. Then she looks at the stones next to the plate and comments in a sarcastic tone that it seems someone played a nasty prank. Tolria immediately realizes this must also be the doing of Lilius and his wife. She recalls what she has been through. She thought she could endure everything, even when she was served only apples instead of meals, and even when she was left alone without a single servant. She believed that no matter how cruel Lilius was, she could endure. But this act, putting stones in her food, is beyond pathetic, and she feels she can no longer take them seriously. Aubrey calls out to Tolria and steps towards her. She thinks to herself in astonishment, wondering why Aubrey is approaching her now, after all that torment. She continues to think angrily. How dare Aubrey show anger towards her? She is surprised by Aubrey falling to the ground in a collapse, thinking how ridiculous this situation is. Tolia is surprised by the reaction, as Aubrey's attitude completely changes in an instant. Aubrey screams at the maid after slapping her across the face, asking her how she dares to commit such filth against her precious niece. She stands stunned, wondering what is happening. She was sure Aubrey would blame her, and wonders about this strange shift. The maid is shown trembling with fear, trying to stammer that she was just... Aubrey cuts her off sharply, screaming at her, "How dare you speak?" Aubrey turns to Tolria with a fake gentle tone, expressing regret for the scare she must have had. She asks Tolria what she should do with this maid, assuring her that, as always, she will do whatever Tolria desires. These words raise her suspicions. She wonders why Aubrey is suddenly acting this way, and about her offer to fulfill her wishes. She realizes Aubrey didn't come all this way just to check on her, and concludes she must have an ulterior motive. Tolria decides to test the situation. She tells her Aunt Aubrey that she is the one managing the household, so she will leave the matter to her. But she adds one condition. She doesn't want to see any more violence in this precious room her grandfather gave her. Aubrey smiles slyly, asking if that's what she wants, then agrees, saying, "All right." Immediately, she turns and orders the guards to drag that insolent maid to the dungeon. The guards comply immediately. She is shocked again, wondering why Aubrey would banish a maid she is sure she planted herself. The dungeon is too harsh a punishment. The maid is dragged away screaming, begging my lady, Aubrey, to wait, claiming she was set up. She continues to scream that she was just following orders. The maid keeps screaming as she's dragged away, pleading for the young miss, Tolria, to listen to her and save her, repeating I was set up before the door is slammed shut behind her. Aubrey turns to Tolria, shedding fake tears, claiming she sent the maid to serve Tolria, and that her heart as an aunt is breaking because the maid did such a thing. Tolria watches this scene, thinking that Aubrey is the one who sent her, and now she's disposing of her. She wonders what Aubrey is planning. She continues her act, saying that the position of maid cannot be left vacant. In that case, she offers to recommend a new maid for Tolria. Aubrey enthusiastically announces that she knows some good talents. Tolria realizes in that moment what is happening, understanding the real reason behind Aubrey's easy disposal of the first maid. The picture becomes clear in her mind. Aubrey was worried about the Grand Duke, so she couldn't plant her real maid from the beginning. Instead, she sent a disposable maid to create a pretext for harassing Tolria. She finds herself in a bind, thinking about how to refuse this offer. She realizes she can't simply refuse. There are too many things to consider. Aubrey claps her hands, ordering the candidates for the head maid position to be brought in. 2 maids enter. Aubrey tells her she felt these 2 would be able to serve her well, and asks her to choose one of them to be her head maid. Aubrey introduces the first maid, explaining her name is Rilda, and she comes from a noble family where her father held the title of baronet. Then she introduces the second maid, who introduces herself as Adele, and Aubrey describes her as quick-witted and sharp. She adds that this description only applies to her being from the borderlands. Tolria is shocked, wondering in confusion what Aubrey just said, repeating the term borderlands to herself. She recalls the definition of the borderlands, a place also known as the land forsaken by the gods. A vast, desolate land located in the far east of the empire. It's a kind of slum, and rumors circulate about it being infested with heretics and cannibals. She realizes Aubrey is being deliberate with this choice. In the refined high society where a maid's origin is important, bringing someone from the borderlands is a very obvious act intended to prevent her from being chosen. It was clear that Rilda was the one Aubrey wanted her to choose. She thinks that her former self, the original Tolria, would have chosen Rilda without hesitation. She hesitates, realizing that if she chooses Adele, her reputation might be affected due to her maid's reputation, which could negatively impact her stats. She is confused about the best thing to do in this situation. Suddenly, a new system window she had never seen before appears, offering a view profile option. She realizes that if she checks both their profiles, she will definitely know who to choose. She decides to start with Adele's profile. The profile shows Adele is 40 years old, from the borderlands, started serving in the Fraser ducal house at the age of 20, and showed outstanding work performance. She sees this isn't much different from the explanation Aubrey gave, but she notices a button dedicated to secrets. She hesitates for a moment, wondering if pressing See More will automatically cost her coins, as a kind of trap, but she decides she has nothing to lose and presses it. The secret is revealed. Adele's hidden secret is that she is the hidden younger sister of the Grand Duke's aide, Luke Kilbusher. Additional information states that Luke Kilbusher feels immense guilt towards Adele. She is extremely shocked, wondering in disbelief how Adele could be Luke's younger sister. She focuses on the additional information stating that Luke feels immense guilt towards Adele. Tolria calls out to her Aunt Aubrey. Aubrey asks her enthusiastically if she is chosen, suggesting that Rilda would surely be better and suit her dignity. She answers her with a no. She smiles and announces that she will choose Adele to be her head maid. The scene shifts to later, where Adele is combing Tolria's hair. Adele tells Miss Tolria that the tangled part is gone, and she thanks her for her hard work. She thanks her. She thinks that Adele is good at her job and also kind, which makes her feel comfortable. She wonders if this is because she and Luke are siblings. Tolria thinks that after appointing Adele, Aubrey and all the other maids were stunned and couldn't say anything. She concludes they were probably shocked at her choosing a maid from the borderlands. But for her, as soon as she saw Adele's profile settings, her origin no longer mattered. She wonders how she could not choose Luke Kilbusher's hidden sister. This information would surely be useful to her. She wonders about the nature of this guilt that Luke feels towards his sister. She feels overjoyed that her hair is back to normal, thinking she can finally walk around with decent hair and that she is back to her old self and even looks better than before. She sighs, wishing things would stay calm like this. She thinks that she can't believe how the wealth stat problem, which seemed like the biggest obstacle, was resolved so easily. She considers it lucky that the Lilius couple was this stupid. She decides she will raise the rest of her stats one by one, realizing the only thing left is her bad reputation. She realizes that no matter how hard she tries to raise her stats, she won't be able to get an A rating if everyone hates her. To raise her reputation, she has to enter the main episode and solve incidents, just like Kariko did. This inevitably means she will have to meet the male leads in the story. She thinks she must at least leave an impression on them, even if she doesn't aim to raise their affection level for her. And to be able to meet them, she needs to be able to move freely, which requires her to obtain the direct lineage necklace. She realizes her debutante ball is still too far away, so she has to find another way. She wonders if she should try to raise the Grand Duke's affection level, then ask him for the necklace. She remembers that in Koriko's time, the higher his affection level, the easier it was to ask him for favors. She looks for a quick way to raise his affection level. One option is to present large quantities of handmade jam, but there's a limit to what she can make in one day. Besides, Adele won't stand by and watch her exhaust herself making jam, and will ask her to rest. Tolria thinks that if she gives the Duke jam made by Adele, the gift will lose its handmade meaning. The Grand Duke will notice she didn't make it herself, and thus his affection level won't rise. And he might even think, this is definitely not Tolria's making. Tolria continues to think, wondering how to raise the Grand Duke's affection level. She wonders if she should try to exploit an upcoming event to her advantage. She remembers that the closest event is the meeting regarding the status planes. Events clarify that the status planes was land that players had to acquire to see the ending in the game. It was also the place where Lilius and the third son, Fraser Nigella, pushed hard to establish a horse ranch project. Of course, she remembered that the game's story made it clear that the horse ranch project had failed miserably. This gives her an idea, and she wonders what would happen if she voted against the project in the meeting. She concludes that the horse ranch project will fail anyway. By opposing it, she will protect that land and prevent a loss for the Fraser family. She sees this as an opportunity to show her diligent side by preventing this loss. Additionally, she plans to show her capable side in family affairs to raise their affection level for her. Besides all that, she remembers that she also has the right to use that, the voting right, and she is confident that if she uses it, she can defeat her uncles. But she smiles slyly, realizing there is an obstacle. She cannot go to a meeting of this importance with her current stats. She wonders if she should use the coins she had been saving. The scene shifts to the meeting room in the Grand Duke's palace. Lilius thinks that today is finally the day to take control of the status planes. He comments to the Count's representative beside him, noting that it took a long time to put this matter on the Council's agenda. The representative, Neville Fraser's representative, agrees but expresses hesitation. He asks if this is right, reminding him that it was the land the late Grand Duchess cherished dearly. He imagines that His Grace, the Grand Duke, might have considered canceling the vote because of that. He laughs sarcastically, telling the representative he doesn't know his father well. He explains that his father and mother were practically mortal enemies, famous for their hostility. He asks sarcastically if the representative really thinks his father would care what happens to the land his mother loved. He continues that all that matters is expanding their business and winning the Empress's favor. The representative notes that they seem to be the only members of the direct family present today. He reassures him not to worry, confirming there will be no null votes. He smiles confidently, declaring that the approval votes will easily win the majority. At that moment, the arrival of His Grace, the Grand Duke, is announced. The Duke enters and sits on his throne. Lilius quickly greets his father, wishing him a good morning and asking if he rested well last night. The Grand Duke ignores the greeting and coldly orders everyone to be seated. Then he announces the start of the meeting. The session chairman begins the proceedings, announcing that this council convenes in the honor of the Fraser family. He asks all attendees to swear and pledge to uphold the dignity befitting their direct lineage. He listens sternly and looks at the empty seat beside him. A quick memory of his late wife calling his name, Assis, flashes through his mind. He frowns and clenches his hand tightly, affected by the memory. The chairman continues, announcing they will now move to the emergency voting session. He clarifies that the attendees are two representatives, Lilius Fraser and the proxy for Nigella Fraser. Suddenly, a voice interrupts the proceedings, asking them to wait a moment. Lilius and the Grand Duke turn in surprise. The voice apologizes for the delay. Tolria Fraser enters the hall, announcing her attendance at the Direct Lineage Council meeting. She apologizes, explaining that this is her first time looking for the council hall, and so she lost her way. The chairman welcomes her, confirming it's all right, and that any direct descendant of the Fraser family has the right to attend this meeting. She thanks him. Lilius looks at her with intense anger, thinking to himself, wondering what that troublemaker is doing here suddenly, and what she is planning now. Nevilla's representative whispers to Baron Lilius, telling him to calm down. The representative reassures him that even if that child votes against them, it won't change anything. He confirms that the approval votes will form a majority anyway, so there's no need to worry. He calms down, convinced the representative is right. He thinks to himself that he doesn't know what that fool is planning by showing her face, but he is sure there is nothing she can really do. He decides that if she starts speaking nonsense, he will order her thrown out, and vows he will make her regret coming. The chairman officially announces that there are 3 direct family members present, then declares the meeting open. The chairman explains that the agenda concerns the authorization for commercial development on the status planes. According to family law, he asks those in favor to raise their hands. Lilius and the other representative raise their hands, while he notices Tolria did not raise hers. He thinks sarcastically that it doesn't matter. Her vote only represents one person and wonders what foolish thoughts she brought with her. He addresses her, pointing out sarcastically that it seems his niece opposes the development of the status planes. She smiles and confirms, of course, and that she naturally opposes it. He comments coolly that her answer is bold, while the Grand Duke remains silent. He adds mockingly, asking if she even knows where the status planes are located, adding that he is curious to hear her reason. She replies with a calm smile, explaining that the chairman already explained the location before the meeting started, and her uncle must not have been listening. He is shocked by her sharp retort and is left speechless. She continues with a smile, confirming he asked for her reason for opposing, didn't he? She begins to present her argument, explaining that the status planes are damp and soft, making them unsuitable for raising horses. She adds that despite its central location and ease of connection to the capital, its area is too vast, meaning profits from development would be minuscule compared to the investment investment size. Then she asks them with a sly smile if they considered the cost of entertaining the nobles who would visit the site. She rejoices internally, considering this a smashing success, and thinks her decision to raise her stats last night was genius. A flashback to last night appears, where she used her coins and the system announced +1 skill achieved and skill penalty removed, leaving her with 993 coins. She noted that raising the skill didn't cost as many coins as she thought. She felt satisfied, thinking that after raising her stats, she wouldn't make the same verbal mistakes as before. A new system window appeared, announcing the opening of the skill stat store, allowing her to buy skill-related titles. She was surprised by this new system, noting it wasn't in the original game, and wondered if this was an exclusive feature for Tolria. She opened the store and saw many available options, like Master of Words, Homemade Jam Expert, and Walking Encyclopedia. She realized she could buy and use these titles from now on. She found what suited her perfectly and decided to buy 2 skills in preparation for tomorrow's meeting. The skills she chose were Master of Words and Walking Encyclopedia. She considered the encyclopedia skill would be very useful for someone like her who doesn't know this world well. The skills cost her 200 coins, but she didn't regret it. The skill descriptions explained that Master of Words adds 10% persuasive power to speech and reduces the chance of saying something wrong, and Walking Encyclopedia grants general knowledge in all fields. Back at the meeting, Lilia slams the table angrily, yelling at Tolria, asking what she could possibly know. He continues shouting that the land was personally inspected by Her Majesty the Empress, and that she agreed to provide horses for the project. He accuses her of daring to challenge Her Majesty personally. She replies calmly and confidently, using her new skill, asking her uncle if the authority over the entire equestrian project doesn't belong to His Majesty the Emperor alone. He stammers in shock, thinking to himself how she could possibly know something like that. She smiles, calls his name, and advises him not to be so obsessed with the imperial family that he abandons the Fraser family's pride. He flies into a rage, calling her insolent and wondering how she dares to speak to her uncle this way. She ignores Lilius and addresses her grandfather directly. She tells him this plan will only bring shame upon the family's honor, and declares her opposition to proceeding with the commercial use of the plains at this time. Lilius intervenes in a panic, begging his father not to pay attention to that child's words. He insists they already have 2 supporting votes, which is the majority, and that the opinion of an ignorant little girl means nothing. She interrupts him calmly, telling him he is mistaken. She explains that according to family law, they are allowed to vote by proxy on behalf of direct family members during council meetings. She adds sarcastically that this matter probably doesn't concern him, as his son Tedric is still under disciplinary suspension. Then, Tolria Fraser delivers her finishing blow, announcing that she, on behalf of her father and her twin brothers, members of the Marquis family, casts a total of 4 votes, all opposing the proposal. She concludes her presentation by asking if anyone has any objections. The chairman announces he will declare the results immediately. The chairman announces that the result of the meeting regarding the authorization for commercial use of the status planes is a total of 2 votes in favor and a total of 4 votes against. Accordingly, the meeting concludes with the rejection of the use of the planes. The meeting concludes. Lilius feels overwhelming anger, telling them this is ridiculous. He continues to shout that this can't be happening, and that her suddenly appearing at the meeting and using this trick is absurd. The Grand Duke calls his son Lilius. He asks him coldly if he just described the family law as a trick. He immediately backtracks, stammering that he didn't mean that. He is forced to apologize. She feels successful, thinking that it was definitely worth getting the skill title. She thinks the important thing now is whether this act raised the Grand Duke's affection level for her. She tries to read her grandfather's expressions but can't, so she doesn't know what he is thinking. She notices the affection level window appears and disappears on its own, wondering if she should buy a feature with coins later to be able to see it. The Grand Duke calls her. She stands up and answers, asking him what he wants. He orders her to follow him, then stands up and leaves the hall. She follows him, wondering what he has to say that requires changing locations. The Grand Duke enters an incredibly luxurious room. She is astonished by the opulence of the place and wonders about the nature of this room. She thinks that she doesn't believe even Koriko has seen this room before, despite her wandering into almost every room in the palace. She notices the room doesn't look used, with almost no trace of use in it. She wonders why the Duke brought her to a place like this. She gathers her courage and asks her grandfather why they are here. The Grand Duke addresses her, pointing out that she hasn't attended a single meeting all this time, and yet he wondered how she knew she could use the proxy vote. She hesitates slightly, thinking to herself if he suspects her because this behavior is unlike the original Tolria. But she quickly decides this situation is better. For a granddaughter acting differently from her usual image, it would be better for him to think she studied hard separately. She answers that she read a book about family law in the main building's library a long time ago, and she remembered what she read then. The Grand Duke seems somewhat surprised, repeating her words, wondering if she read a book about family law. He suddenly asks her which generation of the Fraser family the Duke belongs to, and when the family was promoted from a duchy to a grand duchy. She answers that it is the 17th generation, and the promotion began from the 5th generation, Lord Solai Fraser, who defeated the barbarians, deciphered the ancient language, and discovered a dragon's bone. She is internally annoyed by his suspicion, thinking he is a man so harsh that he even doubts her reading a book. He could have simply praised his granddaughter for reading a book she had never read before. However, she feels relieved that the questions the Duke asked were within the passive range of her skill. She thinks how unfair the situation would have become if she knew the answer but couldn't respond due to the original Tolria's low stats. The Grand Duke tells her she has surprised him several times today. She sighs in relief, feeling the suspicions have dissipated for now. He continues, saying the insubordination she committed today was the most surprising, referring to her bold heart in overturning the vote result against her uncles in a public place. He describes her act as very daring. She becomes tense. She realizes that for the Duke, who values hierarchy and family, her actions might indeed seem like insubordination. The Grand Duke concludes his speech, saying he will overlook what she did today because it's the first time, but he warns her that starting from next time, she stands before her grandfather, wondering if he is curious to know the reason that drove her to act this way. A determined look appears in her eyes. She is thinking she doesn't intend to apologize and end it there. She didn't do this with half-hearted resolve. She continues to think that she still has a lot to say, and she will say everything she needs to say, and then leave. She begins her speech, admitting she is well aware she committed an act of insubordination against her uncles, but she asserts she was forced to. She explains she had to prepare a way to protect herself, even if it meant going this far. The Grand Duke looks surprised and asks her what she is talking about, repeating the word protection in confusion. She answers him calmly that the reason is she doesn't have a father or mother to protect her. The Grand Duke seems deeply affected to hear these words. She continues to explain her situation. She reminds him that, as he knows, she was deceived by her uncle Lilius before and did not receive proper protection. To avoid this from happening again, she needs her own strength, but she points out she hasn't come of age yet, and therefore doesn't have the right to act freely. She explains that her twin brothers have already established their positions and received the direct lineage necklace, enabling them to fully protect themselves. As for her, she is still far from her official debutante ball. She reveals her true motive. She did it hoping that if she prevented a loss for the duchy and earned her grandfather's recognition, he might grant her a chance to obtain the direct lineage necklace. The Grand Duke answers calmly that he understands. She is shocked by his response. The Duke corrects himself, asking her not to make him repeat the words he said earlier. He clarifies that although she did something beneficial for the family, she created a rift in the bond between family members. He adds sternly that regarding the direct lineage necklace, granting it to her now is against family law and cannot be done. Then he declares the conversation is over. He orders her to leave the room immediately. She turns to leave, thinking it seems difficult to persuade him further, and she must wait for the next opportunity. She continues thinking as she leaves, noting that considering he was reprimanding her, it's strange she wasn't punished separately. Suddenly she hears a ringing sound. She is surprised and wonders if this is a notification from the status window. The system window appears, announcing that the Duke's affection level is rising significantly, jumping from 30% to 50%. She is extremely shocked, wondering in disbelief what the system said, repeating in disbelief that the affection level reached 50%, and that this rise is happening at this very moment. Another system window appears, explaining that achieving 50% affection level with Aces Fraser grants a special benefit, a video titled The Lost Ring. She thinks excitedly that even if she doesn't know what this is, it must be something useful. The video begins to play. She wonders in confusion what is happening, realizing what she is seeing is Duke Aces when he was young. The video confirms the scene is from decades ago, showing Aces Fraser at the age of 19. The entrance of the bride, Lycian Marbian, from the royal family of the Summer Continent is announced. The narration explains that the Duke and Duchess, who met through a forced political marriage, were famous for their bad relationship even before the marriage, and it was said they were seeking to destroy each other. However, the narration reveals this was just a false rumor spread among the commoners. The truth is, there was a hidden story, completely different from those rumors. Lycian Marbian was the princess of the Summer Continent. Before becoming the Grand Duchess, Lycian was a princess possessing the qualities of a wise and noble ruler. She cared for her people more than anyone else, and her multiple talents led her to dream of one day becoming the queen of her nation. People adored her for her wisdom and kindness, and it seemed natural she would become the queen of the Summer Continent. But dreams rarely match reality. Many ignored the young princess or tried to suppress her because royal women were just tools to secure alliances between nations. And Lycian was no exception to this rule. The video continues to reveal the past of the late Grand Duchess, Lycian. It shows she refused and resisted this fate, political marriage, repeatedly, and even fought desperately to change her destiny, even if it meant preparing for a civil war. But in the end, Lycian lost the battle for the throne. It becomes clear that the reason Aces Fraser, the young duke, married her was purely for her royal status. Aces contacted her only to ensure a stable succession for the title. Of course, from Lycian's perspective, this offer was far from welcome. The narration wonders how someone can be happy walking a path so far from their dream. Despite her strong refusal, the political marriage was forced upon her, and thus she became Lycian Fraser, with the narration again wondering how an unwanted marriage could bring happiness. Lycian, who was once a lady of action, turned into a caged bird. She succumbed to helplessness and soon stopped eating and isolated herself from the world after the wedding. One of the maids appears in the video, begging her mistress Lycian to eat something, warning her she will get really sick if she continues like this. Lycian looks out the window and asks about that plane she sees outside. The maid answers, explaining that what she sees from the window is called the Status Plains. Lycian repeats the name, noting this place looks similar to her homeland, and that it's a landscape she feels a strange familiarity with. Lycian comments that they are beautiful, just as she heard. After her miserable marriage, her only pleasure became staring at the vast plains through her window, watching the landscapes and blooming flowers. And there, she managed to regain a faint smile. Young Acis appears, suggesting to her, since she loves the place so much, that she visit the plains herself. He adds that instead of staying inside all day, perhaps taking care of those plains would be good for her. Acis adds that in her current state, she cannot go alone. He offers to accompany her, suggesting they go together. The narration explains that the arranged marriage Lycian accepted reluctantly was painful, but Acis, who was also forced into it, found no comfort in it either. He always carried a sense of guilt towards her, and despite his rough manner, he tried to show her his heart in his own way. Lycian began to notice this sincerity, and the man she despised slowly began to find a place in her heart. Also, the Status Plains, which she visited reluctantly, turned out to be a breathtaking place. Since then, Lycian began to care for the flowers there herself. Her face brightened day by day, and smiles returned to her lips. She is shown offering flowers to Acis, expressing her thanks. Slowly and almost imperceptibly, Lycian began to fill the young Grand Duke's heart completely. Acis previously thought he would never get close to her emotionally, but as time passed, small hopes began to bloom within him. Perhaps he began to wish they could become a real family for each other. However, their relationship did not flourish significantly. Unlike the rumors spread among the people, there were no major disagreements between them, but the Grand Duke was always rough and reserved, and Lycian, with her caution, could never get completely close to him. Thus, they both kept their feelings hidden in silence. Time passed, and the couple had 4 children. With the birth of each child, the distance between them seemed to shrink. But tragedies always strike without warning. One day, their eldest daughter, Hyacinthia, died suddenly. The loss devastated the Grand Duchess, Lycian, and she soon followed her daughter in death. Their love ended, and nothing remained of it but the memory in each other's heart. The video continues to reveal the truth. The Grand Duke still grieves for his wife Lycian to this day. Her grave was placed in a spot clearly overlooking the Status Plains, and he would visit that hill whenever he missed her to gaze at the plains. For him, the Status Plains were the true embodiment of his beloved wife. The video ends, and she is shocked. She thinks that she can't believe it, wondering how the Duke and Duchess loved each other. She realizes this is nothing like the game's story or what everyone knows. She remembers finishing this game, referred to as, countless times, and she never knew such a backstory existed between them. She concludes it's normal not to know, because the game never covered this part. She realizes this explains why his affection points suddenly jumped, from 30% to 50%. It wasn't just that she voted against his decision. Rather, he was grateful because she helped preserve the memory of the Grand Duchess. She blames herself for focusing so hard on raising affection points that she completely overlooked what was really important. She thinks how painful it must have been for him to let others speak carelessly about the land his wife loved. She looks at her grandfather standing by the window and apologizes to him sincerely. The Duke turns in surprise, asking her why she is still here, reminding her he ordered her to leave. He repeats sternly that nothing will change his mind and asks her to return. She decides to speak, telling him she just remembered something, which is that grandmother, Lycian, cherished this land dearly. The Duke looks shocked and asks her what she said. She continues her apology, saying she is sorry for looking at the value of the plains as just a business opportunity for personal gain. She admits she cannot ask for forgiveness from her grandmother herself, but she will participate in protecting that land with him, in her memory. And she adds with determination that in the end, she is also her family. The Duke looks deeply moved, and she adds that she hopes the Duke will continue to watch over those plains as he always has. He thinks to himself, wishing the land his wife loved so much would remain forever unchanged with their memories. He stands silently for moments, touching the window glass. She bows, asking him to forgive her for speaking without permission. She apologizes sincerely again and announces she will leave. He stops her suddenly, asking if she wants to receive the direct heir's necklace. She is surprised and stops. She turns, stammering, saying she didn't mean it that way. He reminds her she said herself she acted, in the meeting, to get the necklace. Then he tells her he will give her a chance to earn one. She looks at him, stunned. He tells her not to argue. If she fails, she will get it at her debutante ball as usual, and asks her to remember this. Then he tells her the Cadimian will be held soon and asks if she knows what it is. Her eyes widen. She knows the name. The the Special Trial Academian. The narration explains this is a special right the head of the family can use only once every 10 years. Usually, direct heirs receive their qualifications at the appropriate age, but the Academian allows a person to obtain this status at an early age. It was a tradition started by their ancestors to allow talented heirs to experience the world early. She realizes what this means. If she passes this test, she can get the direct heir's necklace. She smiles, thinking she didn't apologize for this reason, but she shouldn't refuse an opportunity when it's offered. She answers her grandfather that she will keep that in mind. She stands with determination, vowing she will pass this test, no matter what it takes. After the meeting ends, Baron Lilius slams the table angrily, saying what happened is unbelievable. He is in shock at the idea of Tolria getting the direct lineage necklace, considering this matter contradicts family laws. Grand Duke Assis confronts him, denouncing his outrageous behavior and reminding him she hasn't taken the test yet. He affirms sternly that this procedure, the Academian, is entirely in accordance with family laws. He explains that the Academian was established specifically for talented young members of the direct lineage. Then he reprimands Lilius severely, wondering how he dares to question the qualifications based on laws set by previous family heads. He continues his speech, praising Tolria's actions up to this point, describing them as remarkable. He declares confidently that she is more than qualified to take the Academian. Lilius tries to protest, asking his father mockingly if he has forgotten what that brat, Tolria, did to Tedric. He retorts coolly, reminding him that Tedric started the trouble in the first place. He adds sharply, wondering if Lilius is definitely trying to bring up a matter that has been settled and finished. He ends the discussion forcefully, asserting he has no ground to stand on in this matter. He wonders ominously how long Lilius expects him to keep overlooking his actions. Lilius tries to squirm away nervously, claiming this is just a misunderstanding. He stands up, cutting off Lilius's attempts, and gives him his final warning. He clarifies that regardless of anything else, the Academian falls within his absolute authority as the head of the family. He declares he will not tolerate any more absurd remarks from Lilius. Then he orders him to get out of the room immediately. He leaves thinking in shock and anger that this is unbelievable, and that lowly girl will actually take the Academian. He leaves, gritting his teeth, thinking determinedly that whatever it takes, he must find a way to prevent her from passing that test. He realizes he is already drowning in debt due to his failure to secure ownership of the plains. He feels it is too dangerous to let that girl expand her influence, especially while his son Tedric is still under disciplinary probation. He wonders in confusion how that stupid girl managed to achieve this. Although he believes there is no way she can pass the test easily, he cannot leave any possibility, however slight. He decides that one way or another, he will use this opportunity to crush her completely. The day of the Academian arrives, the special test designed for talented members of the direct lineage. The test is conducted under the full authority of the head of the family, and no form of cheating is allowed. To ensure fairness, a special guest from outside is invited to supervise the proceedings. She thinks to herself that if she does well, she might be able to meet this guest. The door is knocked, and a man enters, greeting Lady Tolria. She thinks to herself eagerly that he has arrived. The man with blue hair and glasses introduces himself as Enchulin Tamil. She realizes in shock that he is Noima. The narration explains that the Bryan Empire is the only empire on the Spring Continent, and it has 4 great pillars of power. The first pillar is the imperial family, and the second is the Fraser Grand Ducal family. The third pillar is the 4 ducal families, and the final pillar is the White Ivory Tower. The White Ivory Tower is defined as a complex of all knowledge and a gathering place for the talented. Scholars there are given the title Noima upon reaching a certain level of knowledge. Tolria clarifies that among these scholars, the character Schultz Schmidt, who resembles the man before her, is the youngest Noima in history. Despite being a supporting character in the game, he was very popular for his intelligent and calm image. The way to raise his affection level was to surprise him by showing unusual wisdom. More importantly, he is a key character necessary to meet the Crown Prince, one of the main male leads in the game. Tolria thinks to herself that she had a feeling this might happen, but she didn't expect to actually meet him this way. She happily thinks her luck is truly amazing, wondering if it's because she used 1 coin to increase her luck stat. She makes up her mind, deciding that as long as it has come to this, she will use the God of Exams skill title she prepared. The system announces the God of Exams skill title is now active. She stands confidently, planning to pass the test and win Schultz Schmidt's favor by showing her intelligence, thus hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. The scene shows the test results, with the examiners announcing her amazing scores. A perfect score in arithmetic and a perfect score in rhetoric. Schultz looks at her papers, commenting, "This is truly amazing," and tells the Duke she certainly didn't take the Academian in vain. The Grand Duke asks calmly if that is so. Schultz replies he didn't believe it himself, so he checked several times, but the result remained the same each time. He adds he would really like to know who the teacher who taught the young miss with such superior skill is. The Grand Duke answers quietly. He's afraid Tolria doesn't have any private tutor. Obvious confusion appears on him, and he asks in bewilderment how that can be. Schultz Schmidt continues speaking with the Grand Duke, expressing his astonishment. He tells him that in all his time as a Neuma at the White Ivory Tower, this is the first time a student has passed this test with a perfect score. He adds that for a young lady who received no special education to get a perfect score on her first attempt, this means Lady Tolria possesses an incredible talent. He adds, looking impressed, that he concludes she must have studied on her own without a teacher, and that she certainly struggled a lot by herself. The Grand Duke makes his decision. He orders Luke to grant the direct lineage necklace to Tolria tomorrow, and to prepare the ceremony immediately. He also orders him to prepare an unrestricted access pass to the private library for her. He adds another order, to send an immediate request to the White Ivory Tower to appoint a Neuma to teach Tolria. Schultz looks shocked, thinking to himself how the Grand Duke is requesting a Neuma from the White Ivory Tower. The narration explains that the Grand Duke and the White Ivory Tower had been at odds for a long time over issues related to political power. For this reason, unlike the children of other noble families who are educated by Neumas, all of Duke Acis's grandchildren went to study at the academy. Schultz realizes that re-establishing a friendly relationship between the White Ivory Tower and the Grand Duke's family doesn't just mean an educational exchange. It also indicates a major shift in the balance of power within the empire. He thinks this will cause a huge stir throughout the nation. Meanwhile, Tolria thinks joyfully about her success. She remembers passing the test with a perfect score with complete ease, just as she planned. She feels satisfied because the skill title she bought before the test was very effective. A flashback of the title's system window appears, God of Exams, which grants a perfect score on one test, costing 500 coins. She remembers her remaining balance became 293 coins. She thinks she hesitated a little to buy it because it was more expensive than other titles, but thanks to it, she managed to win Schultz's favor and get the direct lineage necklace, so it was worth the price. She thinks the necklace ceremony will take place tomorrow evening. She feels relieved it was a long and difficult road, but she will finally get it. She realizes she will be busier after getting the necklace. She plans so that her priority will be meeting the male leads in the story, as she will have more freedom of movement. She realizes her rank rises more effectively by meeting them. She thinks the best option is to go to the Imperial Palace with Schultz first. This is to meet the first male lead, Crown Prince Ferdinand. After that, she trusts that if she uses her strategies well, she can reach rank A before Koriko arrives. Suddenly, her room door is knocked. Tolria wonders to herself who it could be at such a late hour, and asks loudly who it is. Adele enters, apologizing for the sudden visit late at night. Adele tells her she heard she has the necklace ceremony tomorrow. She asks her with a smile if she came to congratulate her. She thanks her, telling her warmly it's all thanks to Adele's encouragement. Adele shows a confused expression and falls silent. She notices her silence and asks her what's wrong. Adele apologizes for interrupting her happy moment, but tells her there is something she must tell her. Adele shows her a paper, and she wonders in shock if this is Tedric's direct lineage test paper. She asks her in confusion why she has this paper. Adele replies it happened while her ladyship was having dinner. She explains she noticed Rilda, the other maid, was acting suspiciously, so she watched her in hiding and saw her hiding this paper in her wardrobe. She continues that she didn't know what might happen if she confronted her at that moment, so she just observed for the time being. But she assures her that hiding this test paper must be a conspiracy to frame her. She replies that she understands. Toria thinks that if this is Rilda's doing, it is undoubtedly on Lilius's orders. She confirms to herself there is no way those snakes would accept defeat this easily. She wonders if they plan to use this test paper to discredit her test results, by claiming she succeeded because the questions were leaked to her. She smiles sarcastically, thinking how pathetic this is. She decides there is no way she will let them get away with this. Tolria calls for Adele and asks her to bring her paper identical to this paper. She thinks to herself that they are still far from being able to defeat her. The day of the direct lineage necklace ceremony arrives in the Astor Hall of the Fraser Palace. Lady Tolria's entrance into the ceremony hall is announced. The guests whisper, and one of them expresses her surprise. The whispers describe her as the star of the day who has finally arrived. The attendees pass around the rumor that she got a perfect score on the test, while others doubt it, wondering how someone like Tolria could do that, or if she even took the test properly. The Master of Ceremonies announces the start of the ceremony. She approaches the Grand Duke and Luke. The Grand Duke calls her name Tolria Fraser. He announces that by his authority as the head of the family, the Cadimian test was conducted, and she passed it with outstanding results. An aide steps forward holding the necklace box, and the Duke begins to announce that in recognition of her sharp intellect, he grants her the direct lineage necklace. At that moment, a shouting voice interrupts the ceremony, asking them to wait. Lilius appears suddenly, declaring to his father, the Grand Duke, that this ceremony is void. He shouts that Tolria does not deserve to receive the direct lineage necklace. The Grand Duke gets angry and shouts at Lilius, denouncing his appearance again. The Duke continues scolding him, reminding him he warned him yesterday until his ears nearly went deaf. He orders him to step aside immediately. He begs him to listen this time only. Aubrey appears beside him, telling the Grand Duke they have proof. She adds, claiming her maid alleges she saw a paper in her wardrobe made of the same material as the test papers. The attendees wonder in amazement what this means, pointing out the Cadimian test papers are made of specially treated mulberry paper. Someone wonders if Lilius is implying she leaked the test questions beforehand. He adds he found it suspicious, too. So he checked the test papers stored under Tedric's name, only to find his storage box completely empty. He clearly accuses her of stealing Tedric's test paper, and thus knowing the test contents beforehand. He asks sarcastically how else she could get a perfect score on the Academian test. This claim piques the Grand Duke's interest. The Grand Duke decides he will ask Tedric himself, and orders him brought immediately. Tedric is brought in trembling and greets his grandfather. The Grand Duke asks him directly, telling him he heard his test papers were lost, and asks if he was involved in this incident. He denies it nervously, swearing to his grandfather it's not true. He justifies his position by saying he was confined to his room on his grandfather's orders and did not leave it. Lilius intervenes to defend his son, assuring his father Tedric followed the orders obediently. He adds it's unfair to suspect them instead of Tolria, and he says if this isn't true, they can simply prove it, and suggests as an example that they send servants to search her room. He adds that cheating on the Academian test is a serious crime. Since there's a chance of destroying evidence, it's better to act immediately. The Grand Duke asks calmly if Lilius really thinks they should go that far. Then he calls, Tolria. She answers respectfully, noticing to herself he is calling her by her name directly without titles for the first time. The Grand Duke asks her if Luke Kilbusher and his aides can search her room, and if she agrees to it. She feigns shock, thinking this is practically an official search warrant. But she notices something in her grandfather's gaze. She thinks she didn't expect this reaction, and it seems as if he's saying he trusts her. She thinks she never expected anything familial from the Duke, but when he looked at her with such concern, she felt a good feeling. She agrees, telling her grandfather, of course, and that he can search her room as much as he wants. Then she adds, addressing the attendees, that if anyone here wishes to check for themselves, they are welcome to accompany them. Lilius and Aubrey look shocked by her confidence. She concludes her speech, saying she knows very well what everyone must be thinking and that this is because of her past behavior. She admits that if someone like her suddenly got a perfect score, she herself would doubt it, so she doesn't blame them. But this is exactly why she wants to prove herself clearly today. She continues confidently, asking the attendees to go and see for themselves. She assures them they will know then that she is truly innocent. Lilius and his wife Aubrey look at her in shock. He wonders to himself why that brat, Tolria, is suddenly acting so bold. He thinks even if she isn't guilty, no one can look this confident in such a situation. He smiles cunningly, believing she doesn't realize the trap she is walking into. He thinks sarcastically her smart little mind won't save her this time, and she has fallen right into the trap he set for her. Shortly after, Luke and some servants searched her room. Lilius and Aubrey, who accompanied them, discovered a bundle of papers hidden inside one of the drawers. Luke brought those papers to Grand Duke Asus. What they brought was enough to provoke the Duke's anger. The Grand Duke orders his son, Lilius Fraser, to step forward and read the papers himself. The Duke insists he read it loudly enough for everyone to hear. This was more than enough proof, in Lilius's eyes. Lilius begins reading the letter addressed to Marquis Astor. The letter starts by asking the Marquis about his health, and the writer mentions addressing him by his official title because he doesn't like calling him father. The writer continues that he is living in repentance and dedicating his time to studying, and that he knows the Marquis will never be satisfied with him. The letter continues with the writer expressing his endless attempts to be a son who doesn't bring shame to his father. He expresses hope that one day in the distant future, he might be able to call him father. He concludes the letter, which he notes he will never have the courage to send. He reads the signature at the end of the letter, which was signed, Tolia Fraser. He looks completely shocked as he reads the name. Lilius stammers, disbelieving how this could happen. She watches him with a sly side smile. The scene flashes back to last night. Tolia is shown holding the test paper, asking her maid Adele to bring her paper identical to this paper. Adele asks her mistress, as she writes the fake letter, if she is sure about this. She continues, expressing her concern that this act will make you look guilty, and adds that the content of that letter they are writing might anger His Grace, the Grand Duke, severely. She reassures her, telling her not to worry because her grandfather is not that kind of man. She thinks to herself, confidently, that his affection level for her has already reached 50%. She explains the real problem will be the people attending the ceremony. People don't really care about the truth. They just twist rumors and prejudices to fit the version they prefer. She adds that right now her reputation is already at rock bottom. She wonders if she is framed so elaborately like this, what can she do? No matter what she says, it will be hard to escape the suspicion. Therefore, she decided she must overturn her reputation and the false accusation at the same time. She realizes it won't be easy, but it's something she must do. She will use a reverse effect. She will make a story spread that is the exact opposite of the rumors circulating about her. She finishes writing the letter. She thinks gleefully, imagining her uncle's reaction when he finds this specific letter in the place where he expected to find the test paper. She smiles, thinking that just to see that expression on his face, she can use her father anytime. She decided she would write a letter instead of the test paper. A letter from a pitiful daughter she can't send to her father. She will use their sympathy, something that will move the hearts of the old nobles. At the same time, if she writes about how hard she is studying, the people who read it will think she is a poor but diligent girl. She smiles and reassures Adele not to worry, and that if it comes to that, she will simply take a public exam or something. She thinks with a sly smile as she looks at the letter, addressing her uncle in her mind as a foolish man. Back to the present, Lilius stands trembling, holding the letter. She recalls her last thought as she planned the trap. Lilius can never be a match for her. The whispering continues among the attendees in the ceremony hall. Someone comments, "It seems Lady Tolria was very lonely." And another adds, "They say when a child feels empty, they turn to indulging in pleasures and mischief." Another noble adds his condemnation of Lilius's act, considering him unfit to be an uncle as long as he accuses his niece this way. Grand Duke Acis expresses his disgust, thinking to himself how Lilius has sunk to this level, describing his act as shameful. The Grand Duke calls for Luke Kilbusher, ordering him to resume the necklace ceremony within 5 minutes. Luke obeys his master's orders. In contrast, Lilius stands in shock, thinking desperately this is impossible. He looks angrily towards her, thinking that wretched woman definitely knew something and planned this. He vows to her he will not forgive her for stabbing him in the back. The loud commotion that happened yesterday ended quickly. Tolria thinks her necklace ceremony was completed without any further incidents. Finally, she received the precious direct lineage necklace. She holds the necklace, feeling it looks more special because she got it after toil, sweat, and tears. It feels truly special. She remembers that at the ceremony, Lilius and his family couldn't bear the heavy atmosphere and left quietly. She concludes they must have felt ashamed. As for the consequences, Rilda, the maid who tried to frame her, was expelled from the Fraser estate. Tedric was sent to the old storage room in Rantel, the place Tolria used to stay, as a harsher punishment. She thinks Lilius's punishment will be decided later, but she smiles, thinking the time before punishment is always the most terrifying. She feels relieved. She knows that family, Lilius and Aubrey, won't dare make a sound anymore, so she doesn't even need to worry about them. Suddenly, she hears a ringing sound, realizing it's a notification sound from the status window. A notification appears from the system, announcing the rank rating has been upgraded, and her current overall rating is D+. She smiles joyfully, realizing she has finally reached rank D. She holds the necklace, encouraging herself. She realizes it's slow and hard, but she is getting better little by little, moving one step further away from death. She decides excitedly it's time to move on to the next stage. It's time to meet the male leads now, and she thinks that among them all, the one she must find first is the Crown Prince, Ferdinand. She remembers that in the game, befriending the Crown Prince gave more extra points than the rest of the male leads. Since the most important thing for her is not to waste time, she needs to meet him as soon as possible. While she is absorbed in planning, her door is knocked. A voice from outside informs her she has a visitor. She asks who it is. The visitor is announced. Schultz Schmidt, the Neuma. She is surprised, wondering to herself why Schultz is visiting. Schultz enters and apologizes for his sudden arrival. She welcomes him, telling him it's all right, and asks the reason for the visit. Schultz tells her he will be direct, and that he came to propose a deal to her. She agrees enthusiastically immediately, saying, "Sure, I'm listening." Schultz is surprised, asking how she can agree before even hearing what the deal is. She smiles, replying, she knows a true scholar like Enuma wouldn't make a strange offer anyway. She thinks to herself it's in her interest that he made the first move. She continues thinking this is expected from the top student of the academy, and because Schulz is the closest person to the Crown Prince. She considers this perfect timing. She was just wondering how to get to the prince. She asks him directly about the nature of the deal. He places a document in front of her, asking if she can read this. She looks at the document in confusion. She notices this is a language she has never seen before. Strange symbols appear on the paper. She realizes it's not the common language nor the ancient language of this world. She wonders about the nature of this language, thinking the system window might react to it. Tolria notices that the walking encyclopedia skill has been activated. She realizes it's a title skill and concludes that since this document is something she doesn't know, it automatically triggered the skill alert. She decides to try applying the skill to the document and notes with joy that it works. She mutters the words she sees translated before her, "From my body, separated from me, to my fragment." Schultz looks at her in complete shock and asks her in astonishment if she can really read it. She apologizes with a smile, explaining that this is all she can read so far with her current skill. She adds that she thinks she will need more time to translate it fully. Schultz tells her enthusiastically that this is fine, and it doesn't matter how long it takes. He begs her to tell him what it says as soon as she can. He explains that this language isn't something just anyone can read. Only those with a special ability can interpret it, and he concludes excitedly that she must possess that talent. She thinks anxiously about this conclusion. She wonders about the meaning of special ability, and if even Enuma, a reference in knowledge, cannot read it. She admits to herself she only agreed to the deal because she thought it was an ancient text and reading it would make her look good. She realizes that if rumors spread that she possesses some kind of special gift, it could also cause her serious trouble. She decides to change the subject, asking Schultz politely if it's not too much trouble what kind of document this is. Schultz hesitates for a moment and replies that it looks like a letter. He adds that it's his father's will. Schultz's profile appears, indicating his hidden secret costs 500 coins to reveal. She feels relieved that it's not an imperial secret. She realizes he has his reasons, and decides she should be careful and not pry further. She agrees to help him, telling him to give her the letter. She warns him she'll need some time, but she will translate it for him. He asks her, overjoyed, if she will really do that. She clarifies, explaining she will do it on the condition that he accepts her terms. She smiles, telling him this is a deal after all. A few days later, a carriage appears heading towards the White Ivory Tower. During the journey, Schultz praises her, saying that as expected, she has a great interest in academics. He comments that her desire to visit the White Ivory Tower right after receiving the direct lineage necklace proves she is an exceptional person. She laughs modestly. She thinks to herself the real reason she requested to visit the tower as part of the deal is that her target, the Crown Prince, often visits this place. She is surprised when she finds her grandfather accompanying them in the carriage and wonders why he is with them. She feels extremely uncomfortable in this awkward situation. She wishes to herself that if he has business at the White Ivory Tower, he should just go alone. In the White Ivory Tower, the woman is talking to someone else, explaining that Schultz Schmidt will be returning to the White Ivory Tower soon, presumably for his training. Therefore, he must realize that for the sake of imperial dignity, he must address her as Your Majesty. It appears that person is the Crown Prince, and the woman asks the prince if he understood her words. Back to the present in the carriage. The uncomfortable travel time ends. They arrive safely at Becca Tower, the White Ivory Tower, the Jewel of Wisdom. She looks at the building in awe, commenting that it's just as magnificent as they say. Schultz asks the young miss if she will follow him, offering to take her on a slow tour of the tower. The Grand Duke interrupts him, saying no, and that his granddaughter will just look around on her own. He then turns his attention to him, asking him to come with him to see the president of Becca Tower. He asks in confusion if the Duke means him. The Grand Duke confirms it, reminding him he will be returning here as a Numa soon anyway, and it's proper etiquette to see the president and greet him in advance. The Duke adds in a threatening tone, wondering if there's a reason he can't, or if there's a reason Schultz wants to be alone with his granddaughter. Schultz denies it in terror, stammering, "No, that's not it." She bids them farewell cheerfully, wishing them a good trip, and tells Schultz not to worry about her as she will look around on her own. She watches them as they walk away, breathing a sigh of relief when they are finally gone. Now that she is alone, she thinks it's time to look for the Crown Prince. She remembers the details of her plan. A few days ago, as part of her deal with Schultz, she requested a tour of Back-Ah Tower. She knew from the game that the Crown Prince appears frequently at Back-Ah Tower, but he appears 100% of the time if Schultz appears. Since a certain situation was important for her while she was racing against time, she arranged a situation where she could definitely see the Crown Prince. She knew there was only one place the Crown Prince could be inside the tower, which is the garden reserved for the imperial family. Since she always met him there in the game, she expected to be able to meet him if she went there. She approaches the garden and suddenly hears an angry voice wondering if the other person can't call him Your Majesty. She realizes this is an approaching voice. She wonders to herself who it could be, and the voice sounds like a quarrel. She hides and looks, seeing Empress Carmi. She thinks that if there's someone speaking to the Empress in this garden, a man's voice reaches her, refusing and addressing Her Majesty the Empress, explaining that his mother is only one person. The man wonders how he can call a maid Your Majesty when referring to the one who died long ago. She realizes with excitement that this is indeed Ferdinand, the Crown Prince. She watches in shock as Empress Carmi slaps Crown Prince Ferdinand across the face. The Empress leaves coldly, telling him to return when his cheek cools down. She adds that in this place the former Empress, Ferdinand's mother, loved. His cheek will cool quickly. She watches them leave, thinking she knew the relationship between the Crown Prince and Empress Carmi wasn't good, but she didn't know it was this bad. The narration recalls that Olivia, Ferdinand's biological mother and the former Empress, was a beautiful and intelligent woman. As the youngest daughter of a prestigious family, her elegance and intelligence were flawless, and she was naturally crowned as Empress. However, the current Emperor, Alexandro, was always dissatisfied in some way. This was due to his hatred for the Empress's cold and haughty personality. Over time, Emperor Alexandro began to turn his attention to other women, and the woman he had an affair with was none other than the Empress's maid, Carmi. Carmi became pregnant with the second prince as a result of that affair. Empress Olivia was so shocked that she almost miscarried her child, Ferdinand. After that incident, Empress Olivia requested an enormous amount of divine power to protect the child in her womb. Although the child was born safely thanks to her efforts, Empress Olivia died less than 5 years after the birth. The child born this way was Ferdinand. At first, he seemed to be born very healthy, but due to the efforts made to protect him, excessive divine power, he suffered from one serious illness. This illness is divine power overload, a condition causing various afflictions, including chronic headaches, intermittent hearing loss, and tinnitus. Furthermore, due to a false rumor that those suffering from this illness are doomed to a short life, Ferdinand was under constant threat from those coveting his position. Back to the present. She thinks she only intended to make a casual acquaintance with him today, but the situation is worse than she thought. She thinks it's better to postpone this meeting for later, but she remembers a line the Crown Prince always said to the heroine, Koriko, in the game. He used to say that if there had been one person by his side when he was sick, he would have been truly grateful to them, no matter how simple that person was. Since she isn't in the heroine's position, she had to win over the male leads in a different way. For this reason, she was trying to create a connection with him, as a friend or colleague, to get to know him and win his affection. But she wonders now, is it right to approach someone who is suffering with a preconceived agenda? Suddenly it starts to rain. She sighs, thinking it still bothers her. She remembers that one of the game's settings is that he is weak to the rain. She decides she can't just let him go like this. She comes out of her hiding place. She approaches him and introduces herself as Tolria Fraser from the Grand Duke Fraser's family, and that this is the first time she is meeting him. She apologizes, saying she is well aware this garden is reserved for the royal family only, but she entered unavoidably because she was worried about him standing in the rain. She adds she will accept the punishment for breaking etiquette later, but isn't it better for him to get out of the rain first? She thinks meeting him at this bad timing and in rainy weather might actually backfire, but she feels she simply cannot leave someone who was just slapped standing alone in the rain. He looks at her coldly, tells her he won't question her breach, and orders her to leave now. She rethinks her decision, thinking that, as she thought, the Crown Prince must want to be alone right now. She decides to return for now and rethink an opportunity to connect with this miserable soul later. She turns to leave, but suddenly holds out a handkerchief, asking him to wipe the blood from the slap. Then she wishes him a peaceful evening and leaves. Ferdinand stands alone, holding the handkerchief. He notices the handkerchief is more like a worn-out piece of cloth. He thinks her name is Tolria Fraser, and it's strange for a daughter of a great family to use such a handkerchief. He concludes that although he doesn't know the full story, he can guess her situation. He touches his swollen cheek, thinking that because of the damn divine power overload, he couldn't hear her last words clearly. He wonders to himself what she was saying. He continues to wonder, will he find out what she said the next time they meet? Meanwhile, she returns, panting, wondering if he returned safely. She remembers him still standing in the garden in the rain after she left, thinking how pitiful he looked. She feels guilty, thinking that even if this is just a game, it doesn't seem right to exploit him when she knows his circumstances. She decides to put her plan to get close to him on hold for now. She thinks it would be better to focus on building her own strength as a noblewoman to be useful to the Crown Prince later. Suddenly, a voice stops her, asking her identity. She looks, wondering who that person is. A young blonde man appears, commenting sarcastically. They call this place the clean and noble White Ivory Tower, but it's full of all kinds of filth. She realizes this must be the second prince, Dave. She remembers his file. He is the second prince, Dave. He is the second son, born from the relationship between Empress Carmi and the Emperor. In the story's setting, the child conceived when the relationship was discovered was supposed to be stillborn. Perhaps because of that, Carmi raised him in an overly protective and spoiling manner. Thanks to that, the second prince's character in the game was set to be greedy and selfish. She thinks she can't believe she ran into him here, of all places. She notices Dave is picking a fight out of nowhere, and his personality in the game hasn't changed. She thinks the Crown Prince is treated badly, so what gives this person the right to act with such arrogance? She decides to get rid of him quietly for now. She feels angry, but there's nothing she can do. She bows and pays her respects to His Highness the Prince. He looks at her contemptuously, asking how one of the commoners dares to greet him this way. He adds threateningly if she has a death wish. She replies, wondering what His Highness means. She thinks to herself if this brat is crazy. She wonders how someone wandering freely in the White Ivory Tower could be a commoner. He gets angry and raises his hand to slap her, shouting how she dares to talk back to the royal family, asking if his words sound like a joke to her. Before his hand reaches her, a voice stops him, calling his name and telling him that's enough. Everyone turns to see Empress Carmi approaching. She tells her son that woman is not a commoner and orders him to apologize. He shouts in protest. She realizes the Empress is here, thinking things are about to get more complicated. Carmi smiles and tells Dave he seems to have misunderstood. She explains to him that this young lady is Tolria Fraser, from the Grand Duke's lineage. He asks in shock if she is not joking. He wonders how this shabby thing can be a lady from the ducal Fraser lineage. She thinks angrily about what he said, wondering in return if his bad way of speaking befits a member of the royal family. He rubs his face in embarrassment, addressing her, saying it's unfortunate things turned out this way, and he had no idea she was from the Grand Duke's family. Prince Dave continues his failed attempt at an apology, justifying his action by saying her appearance was too shabby. Before he can finish, the Grand Duke, who suddenly appeared, tells him the prince is the one acting rudely. The Grand Duke intervenes to protect his granddaughter and scolds him. He asks him sarcastically if the prince isn't supposed to be familiar with the registry of nobles, and is he proud of his failure to recognize the only granddaughter of the Fraser family. Dave and Empress Carmi are surprised by the Grand Duke's appearance. Tolria realizes her grandfather has intervened. He continues his rebuke, ordering him to be ashamed of his ignorance, and asks Empress Carmi sarcastically why the prince is smiling with such confidence. He directs his scathing words to the Empress, wondering if the prince acts this way because he received no better education. The Empress tries to calm him, asking him to calm down. She justifies the situation by saying that, whether they are from the royal family or children of a marquis, they are still children who haven't entered society yet. She describes what happened as just a misunderstanding and a simple quarrel, suggesting they let it go at this point. She adds the Emperor will also be upset if he learns about this. She understands the Empress is using the Emperor as a threat, asking the Duke to end the matter, seemingly gently. The Grand Duke replies sharply, saying this behavior is extremely vulgar, and perhaps the reason is that she is in a position she doesn't deserve. He adds that even the royal family cannot insult the Grand Duke's family this recklessly. He demands she offer a proper apology at once, threatening he will inform His Majesty himself if she doesn't. She watches the situation, thinking she knew her grandfather hated Carmi for being a mistress, but he is attacking her more forcefully than she expected. The Empress calls her son. She orders him to apologize to the Grand Duke immediately, and to apologize to Lady Tolria Fraser as well. He obeys his mother's order reluctantly. He offers a formal apology to Tolria, asking her to forgive his terrible behavior. She thinks about the power of her grandfather's authority that made them submit so quickly, and decides it's best to get out of here before she gets more involved. She replies she was rude too, and asks for permission to leave. Empress Carmi stops her for a moment, saying she would also like to offer her apology along with her son. She offers her a jeweled hairpin, describing it as an early gift for the lady who will become the next jewel of society, and hopes she becomes very beautiful. She asks her to accept the gift without feeling awkward. She thinks the Empress is trying to cover up the incident with a hairpin. She realizes if she were alone, it would never have ended this smoothly, and with the original Tolria's stats, this could have been a life-threatening crisis. She clenches her hands with determination, thinking she must work harder than before, and she won't let something like this happen again, and thinks angrily that right now she has no power, but she will get revenge one way or another. She turns to her grandfather, feigning innocence. She asks him if this hairpin looks too expensive to accept as a gift. She thinks the Empress is offering her a bribe as an apology, wondering if accepting it would bring shame to the Duke's family, and whether she should accept it or not. Carmi understands her hint, describing her as a cunning girl. The Duke looks at her coldly, telling her to do as she pleases. Later, while returning in the carriage, she comments she is glad the rain stopped on their way back. She remembers Schultz will be staying at the White Ivory Tower from now on, mentioning he seemed sad he couldn't return with them. The Grand Duke confirms this, explaining he has been confirmed as the Crown Prince's tutor, so he will be busy starting today. He adds today is likely his return date to the tower and his last day outside. The Grand Duke suddenly asks her why she is interested in him. She denies it, extremely flustered, asking him why he would think that. The Grand Duke clears his throat, saying, if that's not the case, then it's fine. Then he calls her name, asking why she kept glancing at him earlier, when the Empress gave her the gift. She remembers how she looked at him nervously, wondering if it was acceptable to take the gift, and fearing he would be angry with her. She is surprised by his sudden question. She wonders to herself if the Grand Duke is worried she is afraid of him. She remembers how her grandfather defended her, how he confronted Prince Dave, reminding him he was supposed to be familiar with the Registry of Nobles, and asking sarcastically if he was proud of his failure to recognize the only granddaughter of the Fraser family. She remembers how her grandfather held her to protect her, thinking if he is really worried about her, she might feel a little happy. She smiles and thinks to herself, wondering why her grandfather would think such a thing, that she's scared. She is his granddaughter, and of course his opinion comes first. The Grand Duke changes the subject, asking her for her impression of the Empress. While returning in the carriage, she answers that the Empress was elegant and beautiful, but as befits the pinnacle of the empire, she seemed cold and heartless. The Grand Duke comments on her description, then gives her advice. He tells her to always remember that a truly noble person must be a vessel capable of holding absolute integrity, great ambition, and gracious benevolence in their heart for life. As for expensive adornments and etiquette for managing people, they are merely secondary. She asks quietly if he means she should be like grandmother. The Grand Duke is surprised by her question and pauses for a moment, then answers her in the affirmative, just like your grandmother. At that moment, a system notification appears, announcing a benefit acquired. The notification explains she has achieved 50% or more affection level with Aces Fraser and has received a special benefit, 1,000 coins. Her updated status window appears. Personality 0, Skill 1, Wealth 0, Beauty 8, Luck 0, Overall rank D+, and coins owned 1,203. She thinks the Duke's affection level is rising smoothly. Another system notification appears announcing an additional benefit, Lead Bank acquired. The system explains this bank allows her to deposit coins for 7 days to earn 10% interest. She thinks this bank is a very good feature. She notices the diversity in rewards, from skill titles to a savings feature. She thinks she hasn't raised anyone else's affection level yet, so she's not sure when the next benefit will come. She reminds herself her ultimate goal is survival. To do that, her first mission is to win the favor of the main characters. She needs more cards to play when things get tough. She thinks the next person she must meet is her twin brothers. She realizes dealing with them won't be easy. In the game, they weren't on good terms with her. She remembers she was trying to improve things, sending them letters, congratulations, and updates on her news, but she never received a single reply from them. However, she knows they will be returning to the main palace soon. She expects they will start moving against her, especially since she used their proxy votes in the family council for her own cause. And they will take that as an excuse to antagonize her. She admits to herself she doesn't have a clear plan this time, but she has to try anyway. The next morning, at the main Fraser Palace, two young men appear, riding horses and approaching the palace. One of them, Leon, wonders how long it's been since they returned here. He asks his brother Rissan for his opinion. The two young men are identified as Rissan Fraser, the eldest son of the Marquis family and Tolria's brother, and Leon Fraser, the second son and her brother as well. Leon grumbles, saying he wanted to take his time coming back, but their uncle, Lilius, said it was urgent. He wonders what could be so urgent and if their father has returned. Rissan decides they will find out when they see their uncle and suggests they go in, but he stops, noticing with displeasure that no one came out to greet them. At the entrance of the hall, he hears a voice and stops, wondering. Tolria appears, welcoming them as her brothers. She stands before them, telling them it's been a long time. The brothers look at her in shock, and Rissan thinks in surprise at her presence. She smiles, thinking to herself that, as she expected, the twins have returned to the Fraser Palace. She notices they, as expected, already look displeased. She thinks they can't be blamed. Seeing the sister they hate come to greet them isn't pleasant, but she decides there's no way around it. She is also desperate. Leon addresses her angrily, saying he was already annoyed about being summoned so hastily, and now she is the one who comes to greet them. He orders her to get lost. She thinks to herself that, as expected, the animosity is deep, and raising his affection level will be a challenge. But she thinks she already expected this. She encourages herself, reminding herself of her identity as Hani. She thinks confidently she knows exactly how to handle Leon. She smiles, thinking the key is simple. She agreed to speak informally with Leon as he requested. When she asked him if he was happy now, she explained to herself the principle she follows. An eye for an eye. To tame a beast, you have to act like one. She was aware she might seem crazy to others, but there was a reason for it. The path to winning Leon's favor in the game was based on honesty. He thinks to himself, wondering if she's gone mad since the last time. Acting nice or fake only leads to negative results with him. She thinks that, honestly, she prefers it this way, where she can say what she wants without pretense. She decides she is fully prepared to confront him. Then she turned the question to her other brother, Rissan, asking him if speaking informally suited him too. He answers her, stammering slightly, to call him whatever she feels comfortable with. She is surprised, noticing he is actually smiling. This is the first time she's seen him smile. She decides to call him Rissan, thinking things with him might not be as bad as she thought. That evening, she uses the new store bank feature to deposit her coins. She feels reassured by the idea of getting 10% interest after a week, wishing she could use these banks freely whenever she wanted. She also wishes she could one day buy affection points with coins, but she realizes this is just wishful thinking. For now, she decides she just has to prepare for what's to come. She remembers trying to talk to the twins again earlier that day, but she made no progress. Leon interrupted her, asking Rissan angrily why he was talking to that idiot, and ordered him inside immediately. She thinks dinner will be soon, and Lilius will definitely use this opportunity to get close to the twins. She remembers she has never had dinner with him before. She expects he will likely use the opportunity to slander her and fill the twins' heads with lies. He might also bring up the issue of her using their votes in the council. She realizes that in this situation, what she must do is clear. In the dining room, Lilius starts talking with Rissan and Leon. He welcomes them, expresses his sorrow for their tiredness from the journey, and mentions he heard they met Tolria at the gate earlier. He asks about her, noting he heard she caused another scene. Leon replies calmly, wondering what scene he's talking about, telling him it wasn't really that serious. Aubrey, Lilius's wife, intervenes, insisting it definitely was, and that uneducated girl must have picked another fight. He asks her to calm down a bit. Lilius changes the subject, saying they must be wondering why he summoned them so hastily, and tells them it's time they knew. He tells them it's about their younger siblings. Specifically, it's about their sister, Tolria. He reveals to them that brat, Tolria, actually used their proxy votes under their names. He wonders angrily how she could be so insolent and misuse their rights, describing her act as appalling arrogance. Lilius continues slyly, saying he would like to help fix this terrible situation. He asks them, even if they aren't close to her, they surely don't want their only sister to stray from the path. Lilius adds coolly, telling them they should have seen it for themselves. At that moment, her voice rings out from the room's entrance, suggesting her uncle tell them exactly what that council vote was about. Lilius panics upon hearing her voice. She enters the room, continuing that her brothers must understand the full context before they try to teach her a lesson. She thinks to herself her next move is already decided, and she will do exactly what she planned. She uses her skills, thinking she will reveal the truth first and make them look like fools before they can frame her. She asks her uncle directly if he plans to omit the part about his attempt to sell her grandmother's pasture for a profit. She continues, addressing her brothers, explaining their uncles tried to turn the plains their grandmother cherished into a commercial horse ranch project. Lilius shouts in shock and anger, calling her name furiously, wondering what brought her here. Tolria replies with a smile, explaining she came for a meal, of course, and wonders if there is any reason she can't join a family meal. She thinks to herself that, as she expected, her uncle Lilius was bad-mouthing her. She realizes the situation isn't easy, but there's no other way than to confront it head-on. She invokes the language wizard skill she possesses, which adds 10% persuasive power to her words and reduces the probability of her making a verbal mistake by 5%. She feels confident. Since she has the skill, she can definitely win. She decides she won't let Lilius get away with his actions. She begins to explain her situation to her brothers. She tells them the meeting's agenda was about the commercial exploitation of the status planes. She reminds them that this land, as they both know, was very precious to their grandmother. She explains she believed such an important decision couldn't be made by just a few direct descendants. It was only her uncles, Lilius and Nigella, and her at that meeting. She continues that she knows they must have been aware the meeting was happening, but the agenda is secret in principle, so they didn't know the content. For this reason, she also couldn't write the detailed content in the letter she sent them. She adds that since her brothers didn't reply to any of the letters she sent, she had no choice but to use their voting rights discretionarily. She apologizes if this caused them any inconvenience. Leon slams the table angrily, yelling, "This is absolute nonsense." Risan looks at his brother, who also seems affected. Leon mutters the word, "Really?" Then Risan addresses his sister Tolria, stammering, telling her he replied to her every time. She is surprised, asking Risan how many times he sent her a reply, and he answers he replied 17 times. She asks him in shock what he said, telling him she hasn't received a single reply. Tolria stops and thinks. She remembers her letter was sent via Adele, her maid, and the letters coming to her are supposed to be received by her guardian. She realizes that if there is a guardian who can quietly intercept letters midway, it must be Lilius. She turns to her uncle and asks him what happened. Lilius stammers and laughs awkwardly, claiming he was just trying to play the peacemaker because her relationship with her brothers was bad. He asks her not to misunderstand, and asks, "Isn't it good they can talk directly now?" She thinks to herself she knew there was no way that person, Lilius, would stay silent. But she is surprised that Risan had actually sent replies. She realizes if the original Tolria's relationship with the twins had been good, they would have noticed this lack of replies and found it strange. She feels angry and wants to confront him now, but she notices too many watching eyes and decides she must not act rashly. She thinks now that his plan is exposed, Lilius won't try to use any other cards tonight. He will simply cover it up and plan for the next time. She decides to respond calmly. Tolria addresses her uncle, telling him she understands his intentions, but she adds with a cold smile that there's no need for him to go that far next time, and she will take care of it herself. Lilius stammers and reluctantly agrees. He tries to justify his actions, claiming he only brought up the direct lineage meeting to let the twins know it happened, and since the vote was in their names, don't they have the right to at least know? Lilius continues, asking her if she knows he has no ulterior motives. She answers him yes. She thinks to herself this is a lie. Just moments ago, he was lecturing her about teaching her manners. She concludes he's quick to wriggle out of a situation. Tolria stops, thinking about something else. She remembers that Risan Fraser is the one who replied to all the letters she sent. She wonders to herself, is it really true he has a bad relationship with Tolria? She decides she needs to talk to him. The next day, she thinks Risan and Tolria rarely talk in the game. Unlike Leon, who fights violently, there are no major episodes related to Risan. Therefore, she naturally assumed he was ignoring and neglecting her. But she wonders now, maybe just like with her grandfather, there's a hidden story she didn't know. She thinks if she discovers that story, she might be able to get closer to Leon, the other brother, more easily. She remembers Risan is often seen in the library in the game. She goes there and hears his voice. Realizing he was indeed in the library, she hears someone talking to Risan, commenting on how frustrating this is from him. Risan stammers as he tries to request a book. The library staff member replies sharply, telling the young master to speak clearly. The staff member continues to berate him, wondering how he can understand what he's saying if he keeps stammering like that. She watches the scene in shock, wondering, is the staff member scolding Risan just because he stammers? She wonders why Risan is just standing there listening to this harsh talk, feeling angry just watching. The staff member sighs and asks Risan to write down what he wants here, commenting that he feels frustrated, before noticing Tolria and being surprised. The librarian is surprised to see her, calling her by her title. She walks towards him, ignoring Risan, and asks the staff member sharply if this is the standard for a librarian in the Fraser Palace. She continues to reprimand him, questioning the kind of language he is using towards the eldest grandson of the palace. The librarian tries to squirm away, claiming nervously this is a misunderstanding and he was just trying to ask for details. She cuts him off, accusing him of obvious lying and deeming he must be looking down on the palace owners. She tells him he seems to be severely lacking in education, and she will call someone to deal with him. The librarian begs her not to, but she tells him there's no need to call anyone. Then she announces coldly that he is fired. She adds the Grand Duke's house doesn't need disloyal and rude people toward their master like him, and she orders him out of the place immediately. After that, the palace library was turned upside down. The head librarian offered a deep apology to Risan on behalf of all staff, and the involved librarian was immediately fired. She notices Risan, lacking assertiveness, said it was okay, and asked them to raise their heads, but she suspects he was inwardly pleased. She feels satisfied after firing the librarian, but wonders why the rude servant settings never disappear, whether in novels or games. Then she finds the book she was looking for. She offers the book to her brother, asking if this is the book he was looking for. Risan takes the book, stammering his thanks. He adds he also thanks her for yelling on his behalf, and for everything. She asks him gently why he didn't reprimand the librarian earlier, especially since the staff member acted in a way that hurt him. Risan answers hesitantly, saying he might be the frustrating one. She chides him, telling him not to say that, assuring him he is not frustrating at all, and that regardless of the reason, he shouldn't allow such behavior. Risan looks at her, moved, and tells her she resembles their mother a lot. She is surprised, wondering if she really resembles their mother. Risan confirms it, reminding her their mother was from the summer continent. He describes her as a strong, vibrant, and kind-hearted person, just like the people from that continent. Risan repeats she really resembles their mother. She thinks about his words. She wonders if Risan considers Tolria, the original, as family. Truly, but she remembers Risan never tried to stop Tolria's punishment in the past. She wonders if there's something else she doesn't know. Risan calls her name, noticing her zoning out. He touches her hand worriedly, asking if she is okay, noting her fingertips are cold, and asks if she feels unwell. He continues to ask worriedly if he should get a doctor. She pauses for a moment. She tells him she's sorry for misunderstanding he was ignoring her, referring to the letters. She explains she didn't receive any of his replies due to her carelessness, while he must have worked hard to write them despite being busy. Risan remembers something, asking her in confusion why she burned all the letters. She is surprised, wondering how he knew that, realizing her uncle must have told them everything. Risan smiles, telling her it's okay as he has them all memorized. He adds he will tell her the contents of the letters again. All of them. She is stunned, thinking about that huge amount of letters. She wonders in shock if he really has them all memorized. Risan starts reciting one of the letters from memory, beginning with, "I am writing to my dear sister Tolria," and how he was so happy to receive her letter. He describes how he is still spending busy days at the academy, but when the sun shines and warms the books through the window, a little peace settles in his heart. Risan stammers as he finishes, realizing he already sent the letter. She looks at him in absolute shock, thinking he really memorized the entire letter. He stammers as he asks her if it's hard for her to understand his words smoothly, explaining he just wanted to make her feel a little better. She thanks him warmly, assuring him she feels much better now. Then Risan calls her name, telling her that regarding the proxy vote they talked about yesterday, that if she had simply asked him if she could send his vote via letter, he would have of course agreed. He tells her she worked hard on her own and thanks her for it. Tolria falls silent, thinking how nice he is. She wonders why she feels this strange, as she isn't his real sister, and she wasn't really upset about not receiving a reply to the letters. She continues to wonder why she feels this way. Suddenly, she remembers something. She remembers the line that appeared in the main quest window, "No one loves you, except for one person." She wonders if this one person is Risan. Tolria suddenly feels the urgent need to check Risan's affection level right now. The system responds, asking if she wants to check Risan's affection level, explaining 500 coins will be deducted from her deposit bank. The system shows Risan Fraser's character importance is 5 stars, paramount importance. She agrees. The system announces 500 coins have been deducted and the information is loading. Tolria looks at the result, finding it ambiguous. A light blue gauge appears, at only 85%. She thinks she was too confused last time with her grandfather to check properly, but this gauge must be the affection gauge she saw in the game. And she remembers that in the game, red meant hostility, green for other characters, and blue for male leads. And in the completed endings, after a full win, the male lead's gauges would light up in a bright golden color. She concludes that if Risan was that one person who loves her, his gauge would be golden, but it's just blue, and the percentage is oddly high at 85%. She wonders in confusion, so he isn't the one person? Risan calls her name, noticing her zoning out. He asks her worriedly why she suddenly spaced out and if she's okay. She laughs, apologizing, saying she was just thinking for a moment. Risan guesses, stammering. She might be disappointed because he only read the letter to her, instead of giving her a physical copy. He suggests perhaps he should write it again and give it to her. She is surprised, wondering if he will do that here and now. Risan actually starts writing, beginning with, "To my dear sister." She awkwardly asks him not to, thinking writing a letter right in front of her is too embarrassing. Tolria leaves, thinking Risan is really impossible. Suddenly, Leon appears, asking Risan angrily what he is doing with her, and that they look disgustingly close. Leon continues to berate him, asking him, "Didn't I tell you not to hang out with that thing?" She gets angry, wondering to herself if he just called her that thing. Risan is surprised and tries to calm Leon down. She thinks to herself, if she weren't working on raising affection points, she would have flipped this table on him by now. She suppresses her anger, deciding she will endure, respond to him curtly, and then dismiss him. But before Tolria can reply, Risan intervenes. Risan asks Leon, stammering, not to talk to Tolria like that. Risan continues to defend his sister, telling Leon she is their younger sister. Leon smiles sarcastically, wondering the meaning of the words, younger sister. Leon looks at Risan writing the letter, asking if this is the letter their uncle claims he hid. He continues his sarcasm, wondering if Risan is really rewriting it all, calling him pathetically nice. Leon adds, this is a useless act. Leon tears up the letter Risan was writing. Leon admits he tore them all up. Leon confronts his brother Risan, asking how long he will pretend he hasn't heard the rumors. He tells him everyone, both in society and at the academy, is talking about the fact they have different fathers than Tolria. Leon tells Risan to stop this ridiculous family act. Risan suddenly slaps Leon's face, telling him he's really the worst. Leon smiles sarcastically, saying now he's even getting hit by his brother. Leon stands up and looks at them, saying sarcastically, it's good that all your family is busy protecting you. Leon's words anger Tolria, as she thinks about his sarcasm that all her family only protects her. Tolria thinks that even if her life as Tolria is better than her previous life, this doesn't change the reality. Her so-called uncle put her in debt, exploited her, insulted her non-stop, and continued to slander her. And her so-called father showed no trace of his existence, hating her as if she were something to be erased. Tolria repeats Leon's words in sarcasm, thinking he knows nothing about her at all. Tolria remembers the main quest window describing her as trash and hated by everyone except for one person. She realizes she still doesn't know who this one person is, as even the kind Risan wasn't the one. But what is clear to her now is that Leon Fraser is definitely not that one person. Tolria thinks sarcastically about the possibility of Leon being that person, as he's someone who doesn't even seem capable of raising his affection level right now. Tolria knows full well if she wants to survive, she has to stay on his good side. But the harsh words she had to endure, the rumors spreading about them having different fathers, and the fact she even has to make someone like him side with her, all this makes her reality unbearable. The small wounds she kept receiving since she started living as Tolria were accumulating in her heart and never disappeared. She thought she was enduring well, but for some reason, she couldn't suppress those feelings today. She addresses Leon, admitting she doesn't know why he hates her so much. Leon asks her scornfully what she means, asking if she really doesn't know the reason, sarcastically offering to sit down and explain it to her. Tolria tells him to stop picking fights with her. Leon is shocked by her reaction. Tolria tells him she just wants to stop getting hurt. She adds she wants to stop getting hurt, especially from her family. Risan calls her name as she leaves. Leon watches her in silence, wondering to himself, what's wrong with her? Risan tries to calm Leon down, saying with a stammer he understands how he feels. But Leon cuts him off angrily, wondering what Risan could possibly know, accusing him of being too busy defending her. Tolria. Leon continues yelling, wondering how Risan can act this way when he knows everything. Leon shouts their mother abandoned them and left with her. Tolria. Leon ends his shout by reminding his brother she left with another man. Risan stands silent before this anger. Leon remembers the past, his mother's voice calling him my beloved child. He remembers her apologizing to him, saying she's truly sorry. The scene goes back to a night more than 10 years ago. He remembers the child Leon calling for his mother. Leon Fraser was a child when he asked his mother where she was going. He asked her if she was going somewhere far away, begging her to take him with her. His mother looked at him and apologized. She told him she had to protect Tolria, and she couldn't take him with her, but she asked him to never forget she loves them both. Leon remembers wondering that night why she abandoned them, and why she only tried to take Tolria with her. He remembers begging her not to go, reminding her she said she loved them too, pleading with her not to leave them. Leon thinks his mother abandoned them just like that, holding Tolria in her arms. He remembers there was a man beside her he had never seen before, and it wasn't his father. Leon continues to think that shortly after that his mother died, and that girl, Tolria, came back to live with them. But he could never understand why his mother had to protect Tolria. All that was left for them was a shameful story about their mother's betrayal, and a younger sister whose existence filled him with unexplainable resentment over time. Back to the present. Risan speaks, acknowledging that after that incident, he knows they were all affected by the rumors. He tells Leon he understands if he wants to keep his distance from Tolria, but Risan adds that girl, Tolria, did nothing wrong. He points out that if one looks closely, Tolria is clearly their father's and mother's daughter. Leon replies he knows that, and he knows he's taking his anger out on her. But he insists the fact their mother abandoned them still stands, and he can't bring himself to accept or like her. Leon continues. He thought that as long as she ignored them too and went on with her life happily, it would be fine. But he trails off, wondering about the expression she showed earlier, wondering what that expression meant. Leon thinks this is strange. Meanwhile, Tolria thinks she yelled like that out of anger. But when she calmed down, she tried to check his affection level because she was worried about her survival. She calls herself pathetic. She wonders what's happening now as a system window appears, telling her a cooldown period is active. To check Leon Fraser's affection level, she must wait 6 days and 5 hours. Or alternatively, pay 100 coins to check immediately. Tolria wonders about a cooldown period for checking affection, guessing it's probably because she checked Rasan's affection level just a bit ago. Tolria decides to forget it. She thinks his affection level must be at rock bottom anyway, so why waste money checking it? He's not even worth the effort of checking. She pauses, wondering if she acted too emotionally earlier. She thinks that even if they are called family, in the end, this is just a story within a game. But she corrects herself. No, it still affects her. She wonders how she can't not be emotionally affected. She decides for now, she must just avoid bumping into Leon as much as possible. Suddenly, a notification sound appears, and she wonders in confusion about 0%. A system window appears announcing the activation of a subquest titled Lady of the Banquet. The subgoal is successfully dance with Rasan Fraser and Leon Fraser at the upcoming banquet. The reward for success is unknown, but failure will result in a deduction of 10,000 coins. She is surprised and wonders, what is this? Tolria thinks in shock. How am I supposed to dance with the twins? Tolria feels shocked, wondering how she's supposed to dance with Leon too, especially after the scene that just happened. Tolria screams internally in despair, wondering why this is happening to her. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the Imperial Palace, an aide informs Crown Prince Ferdinand that preparations for the meeting are complete and it's time to leave. Ferdinand replies he understood and will be out soon. Ferdinand holds the handkerchief Tolria gave him, thinking he doesn't feel anything from it anymore, wondering if its power faded over time. He remembers that whenever he kept the handkerchief Lady Fraser gave him close, the tinnitus in his ears and the headache that tortured him subsided. He adds he had the temple check for any deception, but all they said was, it's a normal handkerchief and contains no magic. Ferdinand wonders what kind of trick she used to alleviate his illness this way. He thinks his condition no treatment could cure, wondering if that young lady holds the key to solving it. He decides he must meet her again before the symptoms return. Ferdinand realizes he will be leaving for the Northern Front soon and doesn't have much time. His aide approaches him, telling him he heard Grand Duke Fraser's birthday banquet will be held soon. The aide explains a hunting festival will be held during the day, followed by a banquet in the evening. He adds he heard it will be a gathering of all key figures in the Fraser family, and asks for his opinion. Ferdinand decides this sounds suitable, and orders the aide to make preparations. The scene shifts to the day of the banquet, the hall bustling with guests. Tolria notices how busy everyone is, thinking this is expected as it's her grandfather's birthday party. She thinks, of course, she was busy too. She remembers how she tried to inquire with the system window about another way to complete the quest or reduce the penalty, the negative 10,000 coin penalty, if she fails to dance with Leon. But the system window remained completely silent and there was no way to avoid the quest. Tolria sighs, realizing if she can't refuse, she must find a way to dance with Leon somehow. The problem is, she hasn't seen him anywhere since that fight, and she can't find an opportunity to make up. Even Rasan told her he doesn't know where he is. Elsewhere, young men were moving in the forest near the banquet venue. One asks the other what they should do now, while the other draws his attention to someone over there. One of them, Canis Fraser, son of Nigella Fraser, tells the other if he heard his brother was placed under house arrest because of that girl, Tolria. The other replies he told him so, commenting he didn't even dare talk back to his brother in the past. But he's grown bold now. He asks his companion if they should teach him a lesson. Canis smiles, suggesting it be in the most entertaining way possible. On the morning of the banquet, during the opening ceremony, Tolria, walking with Adele, wonders if her grandfather said he was too busy with work to join the hunting festival. She thinks he must at least attend the evening banquet, but she feels anxious as he seems overwhelmed with work. Tolria continues to think, noting there is little time left before the hunting festival begins. She wonders angrily, where is that man, Leon? And has he decided not to attend the hunting festival at all? Tolria feels frustrated, thinking if she's going to dance with him at the evening banquet, she needs to have at least a simple conversation with him. She realizes at this rate, she is heading straight for a bankruptcy ending, due to the quest penalty. She pleads internally for him to show his face, even just once. Her maid Adele approaches her, asking if she liked the biscuits the Duke gave her last time. Tolria replies she did, but asks why the sudden question. Adele tells her mistress she remembered how much she enjoyed them, so she kept some for her. She adds she noticed Tolria seems worn out, and thought something sweet might do her good. Tolria gently refuses the offer, telling her not to worry, and that she is still far from showing her true nature. Adele insists on going to get them, saying seeing her mistress happy is her source of happiness, and if this can help even a little, she is happy to do it. Adele leaves in a hurry, telling Tolria she'll be right back. Tolria calls out for her to stop, but she's already gone. Tolria thinks she must have looked really depressed and apologizes internally to Adele for making her worry. Tolria decides she can't leave Adele worried like this. She decides to join the hunting event first, and maybe ask Rasan for some help. Suddenly, a system window appears in front of her. It announces the activation of a new subquest. Collect herbs from the forest, 0/5. The reward is a Leon summon scroll. Tolria is surprised by the sudden appearance of a subquest. Tolria notices the reward, thinking if the reward is this good, there's no way she can refuse. Tolria sets off to complete the quest, while someone was watching her from behind. After a while, she appears holding a bouquet of herbs, thinking she can now go back to her true self. She thinks the way back wasn't too difficult. Suddenly, her eyes widen, and she hears a frightening growl. Several bestial feet appear before her. Tolria discovers a pack of wild dogs with glowing red eyes. She wonders in shock what is happening, as there are supposed to be no monsters or wild beasts in this area. Tolria decides she must get out cautiously without provoking them, but one of the wolves notices her and pounces. Tolria thinks in despair there is no gap to escape. Suddenly, the attacking wolf is struck in the neck by an arrow, screaming in pain. Tolria wonders in confusion where the arrows came from and who shot them. Two young men appear. One comments sarcastically on her reaction, asking her, isn't that what she should say in this situation? He adds she should have thanked them for saving her. Tolria recognizes the young man speaking to her, wondering if he is Karnas. Karnas Fraser is identified as a minor character who appeared briefly in the game. She remembers he was the illegitimate son of her uncle Nigella, Lilius's brother and her father's, and his mistress, a cousin to Tolria from a side branch, and a close brother to Tedric. She also remembers he was portrayed as having a shady personality. She immediately wonders if he's the one who brought these wild dogs, and if he's trying to mess with her. Tolria clenches her fist, thinking about how to get out of this predicament. Karnas smiles, asking if she's surprised, and tells her they prepared this for her trip. He reveals they left scents these beast-like along the path she would take. Karnas addresses her, calling her name, telling her she has only two choices. He draws his bow towards the wolves, explaining the first option is for her to beg for her life and survive with them. The second option, he says with a sly smile, is to simply die. He asks her to choose now, wondering mockingly what her decision will be. She thinks she was prepared to do anything to survive, but she refuses. Karnas asks her mockingly to repeat what she said. Tolria tells him boldly to go to hell. She thinks to herself that begging such people is something she will not do, even if she dies. Karnas comments sarcastically on her stubbornness, saying he expected such a reaction from her. He tells her to try to resist if she wants. He adds that either way, she will soon regret not begging them properly. Karnas and his companion bid her farewell and leave, leaving her surrounded by the wild dogs. She curses them in her mind, wondering if they really don't care what happens to her, and if they don't realize this act will backfire on them. Tolria prepares to defend herself, thinking that if the dogs dare to attack her, she will not stand idly by. The wild dogs lunge towards her, and Tolria realizes they're coming. Suddenly, a voice rings out, shouting her name, ordering her to get out of the way. Tolria turns in complete shock to find her brother Leon defending her. She wonders in astonishment why he is here.
Keynes orders the dogs to attack, but before they reach her, Leon suddenly appears and pushes her out of harm's way. Tulia wonders why he's even there. Leon tells her he saw Kynes and his men following her suspiciously and decided to tail them. He scolds her for being reckless, and in the middle of the fight, Leon gets wounded while protecting her. He insists she runs and leaves him, but she refuses to abandon. Leon realizes he has to get her to safety first. Tulia attacks one of the wolves using an arrow she found, but another dog attacks her from behind, and Leon screams a warning. Before the dog can strike, it's violently blasted back. Out of the shadows appears Crown Prince Ferdinand, who tells them to step back and handles the rest of the beasts alone. Tulia is stunned to see him, as he wasn't supposed to be there, but she feels a sense of relief before passing out. Tulia wakes up later in her room to find an injured Leon by her side. He immediately starts mocking her, calling her pathetic for fainting the moment the Crown Prince showed up. Tulia asks about Ferdinand, and he tells her he's fine and resting in another room. Suddenly, a system window pops up informing her that Leon's favorability has passed 50%, leaving her totally confused. Before she can process it, another window grants her a reward, a playback of Leon's memory from that day. Leon tells her their grandfather and Rissian were worried sick about her. Then, the memory starts. Through Leon's eyes, Tulia sees a story she never knew. She sees the two young brothers wondering why they didn't have pink hair like their mother and Tulia, and if that was why their mother abandoned them and only took Tulia. Tulia feels the betrayal, pain, and loneliness Leon suffered. Realizing his cruelty was just a mask for a deep wound of abandonment. The memory ends, and Leon surprises her with an apology. He admits he blamed her, even though she did nothing wrong. Having seen his deepest pain, Tulia tells him she completely understands. At that moment, his favorability jumps to 80%. Then he tells her Raishan reported the incident to their grandfather, and the Grand Duke was so furious he sent Keynes and Tedric to the army for years as punishment. After that, Tulia tells Leon she's going to thank the Crown Prince. Leon warns her not to get too close to him, but she insists on going. She finds Ferdinand alone treating a wound on his hand and notices it's healing slowly, which is weird given his instant healing ability. She thanks him for saving her, and he directly asks why she came. She confirms she came to thank him, not just for saving her, but for handling her cousins. Ferdinand asks if there's anything else she wants to thank him for, and leans in, telling her he carried her all the way to the palace while she was unconscious. Tulia is mortified, and he tells her she now owes him 3 debts. Then he asks her to do something for him, and returns her handkerchief, but he doesn't want her to take it back. He reveals his chronic pain, eased since she gave it to him, but the effect faded over time. He asks her to constantly provide him with her personal items, anything she's used to help control his illness. Tulia realizes this is a golden opportunity to get close to the most important character in the game, so she agrees immediately. Ferdinand tells her he'll see her at the banquet and leaves. In the evening, the grand banquet begins. As Tulia admires the luxury of the hall, her maid Adele appears and apologizes profusely for not being there during the attack. Tulia reassures her she's fine, and Adele vows to always protect her. Now, Tulia focuses on her next mission, finishing the sub-quest and dancing with her brothers. Tulia feels her bad luck striking again. In the middle of the banquet, she finds her twin brothers, Leon and Ritzian, surrounded by girls on all sides, making it impossible to get near them. She remembers trying earlier, but being pushed aside rudely, even getting hostile glares from the same girls who used to be friendly, realizing they only treat her this way because she's Tulia. Suddenly, Crown Prince Ferdinand arrives, sparking whispers about why he's there, especially given the known hostility between the imperial family and the Frasers. Everyone feels a terrifying aura around him, while Tulia notices the negative rumors about him are still spreading. Unexpectedly, Ferdinand spots her and calls her name, but before he can reach her, her brother Reincarnated pushes through the crowd, expressing his joy at seeing her. After checking on her health, he surprises her by asking for a dance, admitting it was always his wish. Tulia agrees, but notices Ferdinand's sharp gaze fixed on them. When she asks Ritzian why, he's staring at the Crown Prince. Reincarnated pretends it's nothing and suggests they talk elsewhere. As they start dancing, Tulia feels Reincarnated is acting strange but ignores it. The banquet officially begins, and Reincarnated asks her to dance again, even though she agrees. Her low stats make her a terrible dancer, and she loses focus, accidentally stepping on his foot. She apologizes deeply, but keeps making the same mistake over and over. Despite that, Reincarnated stays kind and insists on trying again. Her other brother, Leon, loses his patience and angrily interrupts them, accusing Tulia of intentionally hurting Reincarnated. Before she can defend herself, Leon pulls her by the hand and demands to swap partners. Reincarnated agrees, calling Tulia his cute little sister. Thanks to this interaction, her Lady of the Banquet subquest is successfully completed. For a moment, Tulia feels true happiness as if she's finally part of this family, taking another step in her impossible mission. As a reward, she gets 2,000 coins and a mysterious perk called Mistress of Life, while a mysterious figure watches her from afar. Her struggle continues while dancing with Leon, who accuses her of stepping on his foot harder than she did with Reincarnated. In the middle of their bickering, Ferdinand's calm voice intervenes, pointing out that Leon is the one failing to lead her properly. The Crown Prince steps forward and offers to take the lead, ignoring Leon's protests and giving a formal dance invitation to a stunned Tulia. Tulia fears a repeat of the dance disaster, but Ferdinand reassures her she won't step on his foot. While dancing, he thanks her and reveals a shocking secret. Her very existence is the cure for his condition, and being near her definitely eases his symptoms. He asks her to maintain a close relationship with him, and Tulia agrees instantly, realizing this is an irreplaceable chance. In return, Ferdinand gives her vital advice, warning her about Empress Carmi, who has noticed her, and confirming that she's become an important person to him now. After the banquet ends, Tulia is overjoyed to get her coins back, bringing her balance to over 2,800 coins. But her peace didn't last long, as the system reveals the details of the Mistress of Life perk. It's a one-time ability to resurrect a dead male lead. This terrifies her because in the original game, none of the male leads ever died, making her wonder why such a reward exists and giving her a sudden chill. The next day, Tulia meets her grandfather, who offers a sincere apology for his past neglect and failure to protect her, and she forgives him immediately. While her grandfather suggests inviting her father for her birthday, Tulia rejects the idea in a panic. At that moment, a messenger arrives with an urgent letter, bearing the imperial seal. It's an invitation from the Empress for a tea party, and her grandfather offers to help her reject it, sensing the hidden motives behind it. The grandfather asks Tulia about her decision regarding the Empress's invitation, but she's surprised by a sudden quest window. The system gives her a choice: accept the invitation or have her stats completely reset. So she realizes she has no choice and decides to face it and accept. Days later, Tulia arrives at the imperial palace, realizing the empress summoned her because she caught her attention during their previous meeting. Expecting to be insulted or fall into some trap, a maid receives her and leads her to the Palace of Protection, where she's told to wait for an entire hour. Realizing this is a classic intimidation tactic, while waiting, she suddenly hears a loud thud. She peeks to see a man lying on the ground, while others berate him harshly, calling him a disgrace and a descendant of the kingdom of Sursen. Tulia realizes the humiliated man is Benjamin, one of the male leads in the game, an ambitious prince born to a humble concubine who suffered from a deep inferiority complex that drove him to kill his brothers and take the throne. The attackers continue mocking Benjamin, telling him his invitation to the tea party was just a protocol and reminding him of his mother's humble lineage. After they leave, Tulia feels intense anger at their cruelty. Tulia rushes to help Benjamin and discovers his injuries are both old and new, revealing long-term abuse. Unable to ignore the situation, she uses her coins to level up her skills and provides him with first aid. Benjamin wakes up suddenly, panics, and apologizes for bothering her. Tulia explains he collapsed and there was no time to call a doctor. Benjamin thanks her but feels ashamed that she witnessed his humiliation, so she insists there's no need to apologize. She urges him to rest and skip the tea party, and he bitterly remarks that he's already forgotten what it means to be called Prince. A maid arrives to announce the start of the party, so Benjamin decides to stay and rest, thanking her and calling her Lady Tulia, which surprises her because he knows her name. Tulia leaves worried about him, asks the maid to keep an eye on him, and wonders how he knew her identity. In the party hall, Empress Carmi enters and goes straight to Tulia, expressing her happiness that she accepted the invitation. Despite her internal disgust, Tulia plays along with praise, which impresses the Empress and sparks whispers among the attendees about their sudden relationship. Once Tulia decides it's time to leave, the Empress stops her, asking to speak with her in private. Meanwhile, Crown Prince Ferdinand is urged to leave the palace for the battlefront by order of the angry emperor. It turns out the second prince, Dave, is complaining to his mother, the Empress, about her insistence on meeting Tulia, whom he describes with the worst insults. Ferdinand suddenly appears and scolds him for his rude talk about a lady from the Fraser family. But Dave rejects his advice and mocks his brother's illness, so Ferdinand challenges him to a duel. Back to Tulia, the Empress asks her opinion of her son Dave and hints that they seem suitable for each other, indirectly suggesting a marriage between them. Tulia immediately realizes this is a plot to link her family to the Empress and expand her influence, and refuses to be a tool in her hand. While she's in a bind, a servant rushes into the hall, announcing a serious incident. Prince Dave has been severely injured during his duel with the Crown Prince. The Empress rushes to find her injured son and demands an immediate explanation from Ferdinand. The Crown Prince calmly tells her that Dave was the one who requested the duel, and after failing to hit him, accused him of cheating, which led him to teach him a lesson. After Crown Prince Ferdinand ends the duel, he reveals that Dave was the one who attacked him with a real sword and failed, making Tulia shocked by his stupidity. But Empress Carmi refuses to believe the story and accuses the Crown Prince of fabricating lies to ruin her son's reputation. She orders the guards to summon the royal physician immediately. While the attendees whisper about how terrifying the Crown Prince is, believing his illness is the cause of his cruelty. Tulia is upset that no one believes Ferdinand, realizing everyone's fear of the Empress has blinded them. Even though she can't help, she decides to show him that someone trusts him. She steps toward him and offers to call a doctor, but he reminds her that his illness gives him the ability to heal fast. Tulia feels embarrassed for forgetting and apologizes, citing her intense worry for him. Ferdinand offers to escort her to her carriage since the tea party has been cancelled. As they leave, Tulia asks the real reason he accepted the duel. It turns out Dave had spoken rudely about her earlier, so Ferdinand explains he was giving him a brotherly lesson. Tulia assures him she completely believes him, so he approaches her and touches her hair, claiming he's fulfilling their contract to ease any potential headache. He thanks her and hopes they meet in better circumstances. On her way back, Ferdinand stops her again to renew his warning about the Empress and insists she rejects any future invitation from her no matter what. As she leaves, she spots Benjamin in the garden and calls out to him. Benjamin tells her he was looking for her to officially offer his thanks before leaving. Tulia is surprised by his boldness and thinks how all the villainous characters in the novel seem much kinder in reality. She tells Benjamin she couldn't ignore him because he reminded her of herself, sharing her previous struggle with bullying and encouraging him to stay strong. After he says goodbye, Tulia decides to take measures to protect him and heads to an old tavern where she orders a strange menu. The owner leads her to a secret room where she meets the head of the Information Guild, Ramos. Tulia reveals her true identity, shocking Ramos, then offers a deal. She asks to monitor Benjamin for 3 years and report on his status, intervening only to save him from death. She adds a strict condition. If Benjamin dies, the guild will pay a fine equal to 100 times the contract value. In exchange, Tulia offers investment information worth half her family's fortune and successfully seals the deal. Meanwhile, Benjamin returns to his sick mother, describes his meeting with Tulia to her, and wishes she would wake from her coma. Suddenly, his mother wakes up, apologizes for her weakness, then transfers the rest of her life force to him before drawing her last breath in his arms. After returning to the palace, Tulia receives a notification of successfully completing the Empress's mission and wonders why the mission was so easy compared to its severe penalty. As a reward, she gets a new perk called Child's Talent Pearl Tears, but is surprised that the perk description doesn't show up, raising her suspicions about a system glitch. Suddenly, the game system malfunctions and displays repeated error messages before shutting down completely, leaving Tulia in a panic. She was relying on the system to survive, and now that it's down, she feels scared and lonely. In her confusion, her twin brothers, Leon and Rician, appear, worried about her after seeing her pale face. Tulia claims she just had a nightmare, so Rician offers to walk her to her room, but Leon insists on taking care of it himself. Then the two surprise her by staying in her room to guard her. Leon explains they fear she'll wander the palace again and get scolded by their grandfather, who has been extremely worried about her since the banquet incident. It turns out the grandfather, after the incident, decided to tighten protection on Tulia and ordered the twins to take turns guarding her at night. Tulia feels grateful for their concern and starts feeling comfortable for the first time. While they're sitting, Richin asks about the nature of her nightmare. In an attempt to soothe her, he reveals another secret. Richin admits he also suffers from recurring nightmares since that day and sincerely apologizes to her, believing her nightmares are linked to the same incident. Tulia is shocked and confused, realizing there's a past she doesn't know and that Richin's kindness toward her might stem from his guilt. Richin reassures her that's not the case, but he remains worried. It turns out Richin feels he's failing as an older brother, so the twins agree to take better care of her from now on, emphasizing that their father is the one who should feel guilty for neglecting her. Meanwhile, on the northern front, Tulia's father, Marquis Astor Fraser, returns from a fierce battle. His assistant Max informs him his suspicions were right. All the money and gifts he was sending to his daughter were going to the palace of his uncle Lelius, and all the letters he received were forged. Astor burns with rage and decides to return to the ducal palace immediately. A few days later, while Tulia is still suffering from the system's absence and trying to uncover the mystery of her past herself, she hears a loud screaming in the palace. Her Aunt Aubrey bursts into her room, blaming her for all her family's misfortunes and demanding financial compensation. Tulia replies coldly, reminding her that she spent 3 years in the same trash warehouse. Aubrey gets angry and tries to slap her, but Tulia threatens to expose the matter to her grandfather. Before she can slap her, a mysterious man stops her. Astor Fraser suddenly appears. Tulia's father, who was supposed to be in the north, he asks Tulia how she is, noticing she looks pale and unhappy, leaving her confused as she didn't expect this concern from him. Marquis Astor Fraser, Tulia's father, confronts his uncle's wife Aubrey after his sudden return. Astor notices Aubrey is wearing jewelry and clothes he had sent to his daughter, so he asks why she's wearing Tulia's gifts. Tulia is shocked, realizing her father was sending her gifts all along. Astor throws a bunch of letters in front of Aubrey, revealing they are forged letters she and her husband Lelius had been sending him for years, asking for money and supplies, claiming they were for his daughter. Tulia reads one of the letters and discovers it's a despicable trick by her uncle, claiming Tulia suffers from psychological trauma and gets seizures just from seeing her father's picture, advising him not to visit for her safety. Tulia burns with rage, while Aubrey tries to lie, claiming Tulia received everything and shared the surplus with them. Astor turns to Tulia and asks her directly if she received anything from him, and she denies it. Astor reveals he was aware of their embezzlement of support funds and orders Lelius to be brought immediately. At that moment, the Grand Duke appears, having heard everything, and expresses his deep disappointment in his family's actions. The Duke orders Lelius to be brought for questioning and to punish everyone involved, and forces Aubrey to return everything she stole from Tulia. After the situation is handled, Astor rebukes his daughter Tulia, wondering why she didn't act or send him a letter to tell him about her suffering. His words lead to an explosion of Tulia's suppressed feelings, so she confronts him that he didn't care about her either, telling him the details of her miserable life from freezing in hunger, to the insults of servants, her begging her grandfather for her life, and how she had to pretend she was fine so her brothers wouldn't hate her. She announces she doesn't want to talk to anyone and leaves. Tulia finds herself back in the old warehouse she used to live in and feels a strange comfort there. Her father Astor follows her, who sincerely apologizes, admitting he didn't know how bad the place was. He explains he believed Lelius's lies that he shouldn't visit her out of fear for her health. Then he presents her with her late mother's diary, which she wrote while pregnant with Tulia. The diary is full of love and anticipation for her birth and reveals how her father and brothers were waiting for her eagerly. Tulia explodes at her father again, wondering if he thinks a diary can erase years of neglect and suffering, and accuses him of preferring his horse over her. This accusation shakes Astor deeply, and he swears to her that if he had to choose between his life and hers, he would choose her without hesitation. Then he remembers his promise to his late wife on her deathbed, to protect Tulia and make her the happiest girl in the world. He assures her he hasn't forgotten his promise and won't lose someone precious again. Tulia asks him if he still loves her mother, and he answers, yes, and that he'll keep loving her, even if it costs him his life. These words were the proof Tulia needed, feeling it was an acknowledgement of her existence as their daughter. Suddenly, the system is back online, revealing that the child's talent, Pearl Tears, perk she got, is what allowed her to release her suppressed feelings. She tells her father she doesn't want to be alone again, so he promises to protect her always. The system offers her to check her father's favorability level, and she realizes with certainty that he is the only person who loves her mentioned in the main quest. Tulia discovers a stunning fact. The system confirms that the only person who has loved her from the beginning is her father, Astor Fraser, and that his maximum love is the reason she got 1,000 coins at the start of her mission. Tulia realizes the only person was her father, and that his affection was at its peak from the start. While she's in the old warehouse, her grandfather, father, and twin brothers catch up to her, having followed her trail worried about her. They all apologize bitterly for their past neglect, as the Grand Duke tells them of his anger at his own ignorance, while Rician and Leon apologize for their cruelty and vow to protect her. Tulia tells them she can't forgive easily, but she gives them one chance, warning them she will leave the family forever if she's neglected again. They all accept her condition, and Rician vows his life on it, while her grandfather and father argue about who will take her back to the palace. Astor steps in, confirming it's his job. Rician notices the dilapidated place his sister lived in, feeling guilty and admitting he suffers from a recurring nightmare. Tulia asks him about the nightmare, and he tells her it still haunts him. He reveals to her that in his dream, he finds Leon unconscious and finds himself trying to hurt Tulia, admitting he wasn't in his right mind during that mysterious incident. Before he finishes, her father interrupts, but Tulia insists on staying to gather her thoughts, so everyone decides to spend the night with her in the warehouse to protect her, vowing not to leave her alone again. Tulia agrees to them staying over that night. Later, Tulia realizes that the Pearl Tears ability is what allowed her to release her feelings, and that Rician's nightmare hides a deeper secret. The next day, her father asks her about her birthday gift and promises to do anything for her, so she asks to go on a picnic with them all, explaining she wants to go with both her grandfather and father, which touches them deeply. The Grand Duke agrees, but insists on punishing the guilty first. He summons Viscount Lucius and his wife, who beg him, but Astor threatens them with a sword. Then the Duke strips him of his title and property, announcing that everything will be returned to Tulia. As a result, her wealth stat skyrockets. Days later, Tulia goes with her father and grandfather on a picnic to the Status Plains, which surprises the servants and greatly improves her reputation. The system informs her she has reached rank C- and got 1,000 coins as a reward. Tulia takes the chance to ask her grandfather for another gift, asking for land that seems useless near the borders of Phylos, justifying it as land of special importance, which surprises the Duke, who heard disturbing rumors about it. Tulia explains her plan lies in exploiting the barren land of Phylos for agriculture, a secret only known to those who played the game, where massive wealth can be achieved, and the favor of the imperial family won using a hidden item in that land. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Sursen, Prince Benjamin stands sadly at his mother's grave to have a mysterious servant named Trini appear before him, sent by his mother to protect him before her death. Benjamin is deeply moved and vows he will become stronger and seize the kingdom's throne. After that, Tulia heads to Phylos, accompanied by 2 guards her father and grandfather tasked with protecting her. Her father's chief assistant, Max, and the Knight Grands. The 2 guards express their concern about the dangerous rumors of heretics appearing in that area, but Tulia reassures them confidently. Upon arriving at a dangerous cave full of traps, Tulia uses her prior game knowledge to bypass them easily, solving the puzzles the system presents to determine the safe path, much to her companion's amazement. But, unexpectedly, the system glitches and gives a wrong answer, leading to the activation of a trap that almost killed Grands if not for Max's last-second intervention. Tulia realizes the situation has become extremely dangerous, but her companions insist on protecting her and getting her to her destination. In the depths of the cave, everyone is surprised to see piles of commoners' corpses. Then Tulia finds the item she's looking for, rainbow fertilizer, floating in the air instead of being a quest reward. Before they can leave, they are attacked by a group of heretics, who intended to use her as a sacrifice to their god, Animus, to get the fertilizer. Tulia is shocked to discover these heretics know about the game item. A fierce fight breaks out, and in the middle of the chaos, an emergency mission appears for the system. Survive on the altar for 5 minutes. The reward is the fertilizer, and the penalty for failure is the death of one of her team members. Tulia rushes to the altar and succeeds in holding out while her guards fight fiercely. In the final seconds before the protective barrier broke, the heretic leader attacks Max, but the barrier activates just in time and saves him. Tulia succeeds in the mission and gets the fertilizer. As the heretics prepare for another attack, Crown Prince Ferdinand suddenly appears, announcing his arrival to save the day. Crown Prince Ferdinand arrives at the right moment and checks on Tulia's safety. They decide to leave the cave immediately before the heretics return. On their way out, Tulia feels tired, so the Crown Prince supports her. But suddenly, a new hidden mission appears. Master of Destiny, save Klaus Rashuba. Tulia realizes Klaus is the hidden male lead in the game, a prince from another kingdom whom the original Tulia was supposed to imprison and cause his suffering. Although the mission wasn't in her plans, she decides to use the Mistress of Life perk she got earlier to resurrect him, and accepts the mission. Tulia follows the instructions to where Klaus is, who returns to life before their eyes. The mission is successfully completed, but Klaus wakes up in a hostile state and grabs Tulia, calling her lowly. Ferdinand intervenes and threatens him to stop, but Klaus refuses and insists that Tulia is his. Before Tulia can understand the situation, she finds herself in his arms. Suddenly, a system window pops up telling her she has acquired the wolf obedience skill, a skill that forces Klaus to obey her blindly and causes him separation anxiety if she moves away from him, much to his intense rage. After returning to the palace, they find themselves in an awkward situation inside a narrow carriage, where Klaus cannot pull away from Tulia. The Crown Prince explains to Klaus that what happened was just an accident, and they will look for a cure for this condition. Klaus reluctantly agrees, while the Crown Prince tries to calm the situation. Meanwhile, Tulia thinks about Klaus's lie about why he was in the cave, realizing he did it to protect her from suspicion because he knows the Crown Prince was there. Arriving at the ducal palace, her father is waiting for her with great concern. Aster thanks the Crown Prince for saving his daughter and invites him for a formal visit, and the Crown Prince gladly accepts. While Ferdinand says goodbye to Tulia, she returns to the palace to find Klaus still waiting for her, announcing he'll stay with her for a while. Reincarnated remembers his childhood and how his mother would sometimes sneak out of the palace, so he would wait for her anxiously until she returned to hug her. But she always told him her destination was a secret. In the present, when Luke, the Duke's assistant, asks him about his request to monitor Tulia, Reincarnated insists on knowing every detail of her movements. Later, he asks Tulia about her trip to Philos, and she answers with the same word their mother used to say, secret. Reincarnated smiles and renews his request to Luke to watch Tulia closely, determined not to lose her again. Meanwhile, Klaus is held bound in one of the palace rooms, and Leon confronts him with intense anger for daring to hug his sister in front of the whole family. The twins explain that their hands are tied because their grandfather and father are in a state of intense rage, and have ordered him completely isolated from Tulia. When they tell him this, isolation might last for a week. Klaus loses his mind and tries to escape, demanding to see her immediately. In the middle of this chaos, Adele arrives with a package for Tulia, and she discovers it's from the guild leader Ramos, who succeeded in finding Bactol seeds, the second item she needed. Now that she has all the materials, she decides to head immediately to the land of Philos to start her agricultural project. Later, the grandfather discusses with Klaus and Tulia the matter of the complicated wolf obedience spell, and confirms to him that the only way to break it is by using his kingdom's national treasure. Klaus explains that separating from Tulia might lead to his death, so the grandfather refuses to let him stay by her side to preserve her reputation. To solve this problem, Klaus uses his ability to transform into the form of a cute little wolf and asks the grandfather mockingly if he's still worried now. The family reluctantly agrees for Klaus to stay in the palace in this form. After a while, on the land of Philos, Tulia starts her agricultural project with Klaus's help in his new form. Despite his resentment at being treated as a pet, he was surprisingly obedient. All family members join them to help in this project, working all together with diligence and activity. Tulia looks at this scene and feels a deep peace, hoping all her coming days continue this way, realizing she won't be alone anymore, and that she'll fight to keep this happiness.